Hello everyone, welcome back to Ask a Scientist Gaming, where we combine mediocre gameplay with expert science, or in the case tonight, expert history. I'm Ken Hansen, Associate Professor in the Department of Chemistry and Biochemistry at Florida State University. I'm a photochemist slash photophysicist, which is a fancy way of saying I shine light on molecules, and I want to know what happens to that light energy, whether it be energy transfer, electron transfer, and hopefully do something useful with it like solar cells or photocatalysis or whatever it might be. But more importantly, joining me today is Dr. Paul Renfro. Paul, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself.
Sure. I'm Paul Renfro. I'm an associate professor of history here at Florida State University. My first book is called Stranger Danger, Family Values, Childhood in the American Carceral State. It was published by Oxford University Press in 2020, and I've been here at FSU since 2018. Oh, and we're going to be playing GoldenEye.
Yes. So what do you typically teach?
I typically teach recent U.S. history. So in the fall, for instance, I'm teaching a graduate seminar on the U.S. since 1968, as well as a class on America in the 1990s.
Interesting. And like you said, we're starting with GoldenEye, all-time classic.
Yeah, the 90s.
Exactly. We're bringing it back.
That's right.
All right. Well, go ahead and settle in.
Okay.
So how long has it been since you played this game?
Ooh, I want to say... I mean, when did this come out? Do you know? Late 90s?
Man, let's look it up.
Yeah, I think maybe 97, because the film was 97 or 96, I want to say. So
1997.
Okay.
GoldenEye came out.
Okay. So, yeah, probably 99 or 2000. So I was 13, 10 or 12 or 13.
Yeah. Now that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was, revolutionary when it came out. So I was in high school. This was like sophomore, junior, senior year. I didn't have a Nintendo 64, but like this was the go-to party game.
So why was it so revolutionary?
Just in terms of like first-person shooters. So
Okay.
prior to this, you had like
Doom?
Doom and Wolfenstein, and they didn't. They were computer-based, right? Mouse
Okay.
control over it, and this
Yeah.
was one of the first ones to do a controller. And so this is one of the first console games that did first-person shooter. And then the follow-up, the subsequent Halo 1, where it added 2 joystick control, that also was a major milestone.
Okay. Do you know a lot about video game history? Seems like you do.
I know only what I've lived.
You know, it's interesting.
Amateur.
I mean, a lot of historians, shouldn't say a lot, several historians have made the case that video games should be used as a source, right, as a primary source to kind of get at moments. So, this would be reflective of the late 90s, right, the late 90s moment.
No, that's true.
And in much the same way that, myself included, some historians argue that television should be looked at more seriously because, it's a reflection of people's ideas about a moment or how they received news, right? And too few historians, I would say, kind of take that seriously as a source, even though it's where most people would get their news for a good chunk of the 20th century.
So I've heard that analysis for comic books, actually.
Oh, interesting.
Because when you look at comic books, like it's always a superhero. Like we're talking about the superhero generations. Like what creates those superheroes? Like it goes from aliens to like going in an African jungle and voodoo to nuclear weapons or whatever it is. That mechanism of superhero origin is a byproduct of the culture at the time.
Right. Okay.
Right. Because more recently it's genetic engineering. Right. And so it's whatever the fear of the time is, that's what you use to, as a mechanism for delivery.
Right, and oftentimes they're allegories for the struggle of the moment, right?
Yeah.
I think X-Men has long been kind of an allegory for either kind of LGBTQ rights or the civil rights movement or what have you. So, yeah, I think...
Or sometimes even more literal with, like, Superman mocking Nazis and KKK members.
There you go.
There's a really amazing story about... they learned people were like...
Seems important.
Yeah, follow that guy.
I'm going to follow him. Hey, where are we going? Hey, I need to open that door back over there, Mr. Scientist. Come on.
He's just using the bathroom.
Oh, got a clearance card. Oh, nice. Okay, so he's running away from me, and now I have his clearance card, and I can open. See, I'm glad I didn't kill him,
there's this really cool story of Superman and the
armor.
KKK,
Nice.
where they introduced KKK members and Superman like mocking them and destroying them, and KKK membership dropped as a byproduct of that because it was like several issues in a row where they just made them into a joke.
Okay.
So not only do they reflect it, but they can make history, which is kind of fun.
This is must be on easy mode because I'm doing fairly well.
Yeah, we'll take that.
Spoke too soon, maybe.
Just get mowed down.
Exactly.
It's just coming back.
Yeah. Oh no, sorry, dude. I probably shouldn't kill you.
All right, so
I'm in the presence of a scientist, after all.
So speaking of expertise, so you are particular to post-1945 U.S.
Yes.
history.
Yes.
That's your domain of expertise.
Yes.
And so, I mean, there's obviously, you start to pick your domain of history and then you narrow it down to a particular flavor. One of the questions we like to start with, because everyone has their unique story. 6-year-old Paul was probably not like, I'm going to study, stranger danger.
Right,
Maybe
right.
or the time was appropriate. But what was the path? What are the key moments that like transitioned you towards this domain?
I've always been really interested in politics, and I remember very vividly looking at and kind of examining data concerning the 1996 presidential election and the kind of narratives that were swirling around at the time, and that's something that kind of drew me actually to political science initially, and that was my major in college at Trinity University in San Antonio. I'm from Houston originally, by the way, and so for the longest time I thought that I was interested in political science, but really I was interested in political history and political culture more specifically. So that kind of drew me to study history initially in college and then in grad school. And you mentioned 6-year-old Paul. I think one reason that I ended up embarking on this dissertation project that eventually became my first book was because I kind of grew up under that regime of stranger danger, that kind of child safety regime in which I was taught to fear essentially all people who were unfamiliar to me. And I have some statistics in the book. Maybe we can get to some of that later, but concerning just how pervasive these fears were and how so many children in the 80s and in the 90s, and really to this day, sincerely believed that they were going to be snatched by a stranger and that was kind of going to be their end. And so that whole notion, that whole idea kind of brought me to that project. But I think more broadly, I've long been interested in political culture and kind of narratives that people weave about a certain moment, and that kind of, I think, gestures back to what we were just talking about concerning comic books and television and video games. How do these pop culture texts kind of speak to a moment, or perhaps shape that very moment?
And that makes sense. So when you started undergrad, you were political science?
Yeah, no, I was actually a political science major, and I was maybe one class short of a double major in history, but I ended up going to grad school in history, obviously.
I see. And that was a direct transition after undergrad to grad school?
Yeah,
Okay.
I went straight through.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense.
Yeah. Did you go straight through?
Yes.
Okay.
And so do you guys have postdocs? What is your...
Yeah. So I was actually a postdoc after grad school. I did grad school at the University of Iowa, and I'll need this decoder to open the bottling room door. So I did a postdoc at SMU, Southern Methodist University in Dallas, immediately after grad school, and then I was actually a postdoc here in 2018 to 2019 before landing on the tenure track here.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah. So we do have, they're becoming more and more frequent. I know there's a jobs crisis in STEM, in the academic realm. There's an even worse crisis in the humanities. So postdocs are becoming more and more common as funding for tenure lines, tenure track lines is drying up. More of these temporary positions are opening up.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's unfortunate, but yeah.
Yeah, well,
it's happening.
Yeah, I was very fortunate in both of my postdocs, but I wasn't asked to do anything, apart from what I would be doing, as a full-time faculty member. So I really got the chance to. Oh no!
Why, James? Why?
But he ends up being a traitor. My fault, man. I just messed up.
I don't remember what happens.
Well,
you just keep playing, right?
Yeah, I think I failed the mission because I killed my guy, killed my dude. Oh. But he eventually becomes a traitor.
Yeah, I remember that room because you go back to that one, right?
You'll like this, Ken. I minimized scientist casualties.
That's what we go for. Sure, we'll shoot dogs later, but we're going to minimize scientist casualties now. Yeah. We're on top of our game here. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's fun. All right, so again, you're our first historian, so thank you for joining me.
Of course.
I sent Paul a cold email after I saw him on Knoll Edge podcast because I was on it and I subscribe to them and I get notifications. And I was like, that's interesting. We haven't had a historian on. Paul, do you want to do it? He's like, I don't know how you interpret that email. Did you watch a video or anything, or you just like, I
did check it out.
Okay.
And
before responding to the lunatic.
I don't know. I think I said yes first, and then I checked it out.
Yeah.
And no, it sounded like fun, and I'm happy to do it.
We're excited because my favorite guests are the ones I know very little about their domains of expertise. Mm-hmm. And honestly, I'd argue in many senses, your knowledge is much more functional than mine. Like you can contextualize elections, which matters to everyone, whether they know it or not. Ooh. Whereas I can only use so much with my femtosecond spectroscopy knowledge. So I definitely appreciate what you guys do and joining me on stream. So thank you.
Of course. And yeah, I'm glad you said that. So many folks, I think, maybe believe that what we study is obsolete or not all that useful, but I beg to differ. So I'm glad you agree in that respect.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I really like about the stream is how much appreciation I have for basically every domain of expertise. And it's something maybe being a speedrunning or watching speedrunning where it's like people dedicate years to figuring out the nuance of how to beat Mario a half a second faster. And it's like, I will not mock anyone for any expertise of any kind.
Right.
As long as you're passionate about it, you're doing something that people like you care about, and you're not hurting anyone, let's do it.
Yeah. Well, one of the great things about being at a research institution like ours, a large research institution, is we have folks studying, almost everything imaginable, right? Mm-hmm. Even in my department, there are so many people whose work, not that I don't understand it, it's just that it's in a completely different world. Almost literally, right? People who are studying medieval Europe, medieval Italy, right? The French Revolution. There are obviously continuities and themes that are similar between these different domains, but our methods are totally different. The ways we kind of approach our subjects are totally different, and mm-hmm. What we read is completely different, right? Very very few historians kind of, or I should say that history doesn't necessarily have kind of one canonical text or a set of canonical texts. It really depends on what you study. Mm-hmm. So a U.S. historian like myself will read something totally different. I'll take classes in whatever French history, French cultural history, and so I'll read some of that, and it will inform what I do. Mm-hmm. But it's not as if other U.S. historians are going to read the exact same texts. Obviously, if you're specializing in the history of the family and childhood and all that good stuff, as I did, and women's history and gender history in the 20th century, you're going to read several books that, you kind of have to read those books, but it's not as if we all share just a set of texts that we all kind of mm-hmm. study and start from.
So do you have like seminar speakers for your department? Like people come in and give talks? How is that? Like you bring in a guest that's 1945, post-1945 U.S. world history.
Right. And
the medieval French historian is like, I'll go. Like what is you just show up to different talks and learn as much as you can?
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes there are these, I sort of alluded to, thematic continuities. So if I have a colleague, for instance, who studies the French Revolution and menstruation, and that, you know, she's an expert on gender and sexuality, kind of in that context. And you know, I obviously don't know much about the French Revolution or the Revolutionary era, but I know quite a bit about gender and sexuality, and so, you know, we have, you know, a lot to talk about, and there are these continuities, as I've said. So, so you can learn a great deal about your own area of expertise by, yeah, kind of, I guess, opening your mind and you know, maybe being open to these different speakers that, or you know, ideas. And but I was actually the chair of our colloquia committee this past academic year, and so I guess I'm looking for this scientist so I can steal his little key card. But yeah, it's a balancing act, right? So you have to ensure that everybody's happy with the people you're bringing in. You're not just kind of privileging what you want in terms of content. So, you know, I didn't just call all my friends and say, hey, do you want to come to FSU and give a talk about this subject that is very near and dear to my heart. But you know, that wouldn't be fun either. You know, it's and so that's another great thing about being in a relatively large department. You know, you get to interact with people who study all these different things and whose interests are just so kind of estranged from one another.
So I'm curious. So from a chemist perspective, we have our different domains of chemistry. We have organic, inorganic, physical materials, like similar to what you guys do. You partition by certain domains of expertise. But there are times when I go to like a physical chemistry, quantum mechanics talk or a biochem talk, and they're using acronyms, and by the third slide of their PowerPoint, they've completely lost me. Now, is there ever a scenario where you're sitting through one of those historians' talks and you're just like, I don't know what's going on? Or are they all pretty reasonably digestible?
You know, it depends on how skillful the speaker is at kind of conveying their conveying their ideas and making their subject matter relatable. You know, there are folks who are heavily theoretical, and sometimes that can be just really dense and difficult to digest if you're not an expert. But you know, in kind of this,
I'm curious. Sorry to interrupt, but what is theoretical in history? What does that look like?
So, in queer theory or gender theory, for instance, I mean, you'd be invested in kind of. I mean, there are all these different types of theory. So you got, you know, post-structural theory, post-colonial theory, queer theory, gender theory, and basically, you know, to simplify it, it would just be big ideas about things, right? And so people will kind of harness that. And U.S. history is not very theoretical. Not to suggest that it's kind of, you know, less sophisticated or anything like that, or less rigorous, but unless you're dealing with gender and sexuality, you're not necessarily engaging with that kind of stuff.
There we go.
You know, if you're a political historian, and you know, you don't necessarily have to. You're not engaging with post-colonial theory and you know, trying to subvert, you know, various paradigms that are kind of dominant, I suppose. So, I mean, one theory that I engage with a lot, or at least I kind of gesture to in my book, is the kind of the theory that Lee Edelman articulates or writes about concerning kind of politics and childhood. There's this idea that Edelman, I think, really skillfully focuses on that really reshaped the way in which I thought about politics. There's this idea of politics as the future. It's all about futurity. And so that explains why childhood has such resonance in the political realm and has so much power. And this, so when people talk about the future, you know, securing the future for our children, for Edelman, that is kind of problematic in that it's not invested in the here and now, and it's almost kind of trying to score political points without actually addressing the kind of structural problems that we face in the here and now, and so it's almost kind of a cop out, and so that informs a lot of my writing, at least in the first book. And there are a lot of other kind of gender theorists who've talked about the family as a similar sort of mechanism in the political realm. Basically, I think you see some of that today. There's this effort to sort of demonize or kind of ostracize anybody who is perceived to be antithetical to a very kind of narrow understanding, exclusionary understanding of the family. And for a long time, it still is in a sense that's a kind of a racialized vision of the family, and obviously kind of a heteronormative pronatalist understanding of the family. So if you're not having kids, if you're queer, you don't really belong in that. And that had still today it has tremendous power. But growing up, I remember very vividly the 2004 presidential election, which was all about kind of masculinity and gay marriage. And so if you're, I think, aware of how the family is kind of deployed politically and how childhood can be deployed politically, that enables you, I think, to maybe understand American politics and political history a little differently. I mean, the Cold War, for instance, it's all about the family. It's all about shoring up this idealized vision of the family and thwarting communism, right? And I think the theories that I'm sort of pointing to here do a good job of sort of illuminating some of that.
Yeah, no, that's intriguing. I mean, it's I hadn't thought about history from that perspective, because you can envision a historian as someone that tries to understand or explain how events happen and why. But this broader theory, it's trying to put an umbrella, I don't know, theme behind, like a cause and effect basis behind why things happen the way they do.
Exactly.
Which is super intriguing, because that is a testable hypothesis, right? You're making a prediction about what will happen next.
Right.
So.
Yeah, so I mean, Marxist theory would be another example, someone who I think really kind of shapes a lot of urban history would be someone like David Harvey, for instance, who I can't say the words critical race theory, but that's another example. David Harvey talks about how the ways in which kind of capital moves, and so capital, and that serves to kind of structure cities and environments. So you see this in U.S. history in the 20th century. Capital kind of moves out of what we now know as the Rust Belt. And it moves into the so-called Sun Belt, the South and the West. A lot of defense spending kind of props up the construction of new communities in places like Arizona and North Carolina. Houston, the Houston area where NASA is kind of based or was based. Obviously, Florida benefits from this as well. And so you have this movement of capital, and that serves to kind of shape societies, shape the built environment and the kind of livelihood or the stability of a certain space, I guess. And then capital moves to, well, when you're talking about just one urban environment, for instance, when capital moves out to the suburbs, that leaves the urban core sort of impoverished, right, and bereft of capital. And then you have capital moving back in, oftentimes in the through kind of the idiom of gentrification. So that's I guess another example if you're looking for one.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's intriguing for me because we're anytime you make a prediction, you're falling in the domain of scientific method. Testable hypothesis. So.
Right.
So we're still okay on Ask a Scientist, ladies and gentlemen. In fact, most people use those predictions. But I mean, how confident are scientists? There's this, and there's a book
confidence
called
interval. Is that what?
No, there's a book called Merchants of Doubt, and it's a historical book looking at the ozone hole and CFCs going in the air, or tobacco doesn't cause cancer, or global warming's not real. It is the same think tanks propagating that information, right? And they're using the same mechanism. They basically rely on, scientists can never be assertive about things, right? We can say, here's what we think will happen and what it's based off, but
Right.
we're not 100% certain. That's where they use this merchants of doubt terminology, because they say if there's any doubt, it's all doubt kind of thing. And so in your domain, I mean, you guys can take history and the line, you know, those who don't understand history are doomed to repeat it, yet we keep repeating it anyway. So like, if you scream at the top of your lungs, like how confident is your community in saying, here's what we know, here's what we predict will happen? I mean,
Well, we're very bad at prognosticating, so we're
Yeah.
very bad at predicting, and I think you could see that, for instance, in the 2016 election. Very few people in the U.S. context, that is, very few people thought that was going to happen, that Trump was going to win. So, you know, I think we don't really predict all that much. I think we can, at the very least, say, well, there are certain patterns that are unfolding here, and they're very familiar, right? And that's kind of the best we can do. But at the same time, you know, I don't know the extent to which kind of scientists disagree with one another, but historians disagree all the time, and a lot of it's, oh no, I failed something.
What?
Oh, I was supposed to destroy all the tanks. Why?
okay, there. All right, before you leave the room. Good to know.
I didn't read that close enough.
Yeah, no, you're talking. I apologize. It's
No,
the challenge
it's
of the
okay.
game.
It's okay. Should I try again?
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, might
I
as
think
well.
I can do it.
No,
I think I can do it. Now I have to destroy the tanks.
I
and I
promise
have
you.
the proximity mines, or the okay. That's good to know.
Detonators. Yeah. I promise no one is coming to the stream for the gameplay. They've learned by now. It's all about the conversation. As long as you're having fun, it's perfect.
Absolutely, and hopefully I'm not the worst player.
I mean, we'll see with your NARC time.
Okay, all right. That's the ultimate test, right?
Challenge every one of your colleagues throughout.
Yeah.
Mostly College of Arts and Sciences, but a few additional education.
It's the largest college.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of us. I honestly didn't know history as part of the College of Arts and Sciences, but in retrospect, it makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and we're in Bellamy.
Yeah, no, that's true.
I don't know why exactly. We're no offense to Bellamy, but we are sharing that space with a lot of folks in the College of Social Sciences and Public Policy. Actually, I think everybody, except for us, is in that. Maybe, I think International Studies is in College of Arts and Sciences. But, I mean, we really should be in Diff and Baugh or something like that with our English folks.
No worries.
Okay. I'm determined to do this time.
Yeah.
I'm going to win.
No worries. We don't have to distract.
Oh, I got a key card of some sort. Do scientists disagree a lot? I mean, because it can get... A lot of this is political, and speaking kind of as a U.S. historian, I mean, a lot of it is kind of... these disagreements take place or can be mapped onto kind of left liberal political divides. So, and a lot of U.S. historians are kind of nationalists in a way. You know, they believe in. You see this a lot with the 1619 Project, for instance, which is at its core kind of patriotic and nationalistic, and then there are folks who are less interested in that kind of national project, and are less likely to maybe see any kind of president in a favorable light. They some folks basically hate every U.S. president, and other folks love some, and then hate others. And a lot of times that kind of falls on partisan lines. But and a lot of, one disagreement that I have with a lot of folks is, when I came into grad school, a lot of folks, a lot of historians, U.S. historians, were really focused on the rise of conservatism, and that's still kind of the normative narrative that a lot of folks use when they talk about the late 20th century. They say that Reagan, the revolution of Reaganism, is kind of the defining process or defining development of that moment, and that kind of shapes the world in which we live, and that's obviously more than 40 years ago. But
man, that's funny. I saw an article today that was claiming Sarah Palin was the was the key point, and then somebody argued Newt Gingrich was actually before that, where actually turned liberals into the enemy much before that.
That's so interesting. Yeah, I mean, folks always want to, especially if you're writing kind of a big trade press book, a book for HarperCollins or whatever, or Penguin, you want to make these sweeping claims that
sell books.
that sell books, and and that are kind of undermined by a lot of. I mean, you have to be more nuanced about these sorts of things, and but you know, especially in the 2000s and 2010s, folks were really invested in kind of talking about the rise of the right, the rise of conservatism, and in some ways sort of arguing, sometimes implicitly, sometimes more explicitly, that the reason that we are where we are is because of this, and that seems to suggest that basically all our problems can be localized within one political tradition and one political party. And in essence, it kind of it overlooks a lot of different processes, kind of structures, and continuities between political traditions in the United States. So, so some of my mentors have always kind of pointed to the bipartisan nature of the war on drugs, for instance. It's thoroughly bipartisan, or the bipartisan nature of I keep going in circles. I'm trying to find this scientist.
Yeah, I don't know.
He wasn't that bad.
He ran to a bathroom.
Yeah,
like you had to let him out of somewhere.
Where is? I wonder if I have to kill somebody, kill another person. But essentially, it's too simplistic of a narrative just to say, well, then Reagan became president and then the world went to shit, basically. It also overstates the differences between what some folks call the New Deal order and the neoliberal order, which is supposedly sort of represented or embodied by Reagan. There's a great deal of continuity between the New Deal and neoliberalism. A lot of, I think, contemporary liberals like to romanticize the New Deal and say, this was a fundamentally different moment. Hey, there you are. Give me the key card. Man.
He's got to go to the bathroom first.
He's got a TT. Okay, come on, man. Hey, yes, okay, all right, nice.
You got to be behind him.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. I mean, it's curious because people like comfort in simple narratives,
sure,
right? And
sure.
that makes everyone's life easy. And this is one of the founding hypotheses behind conspiracy theories, right? Like, if you are a flat earther, you know something no one else does, and there's something comforting or satisfying about that.
And there's a reason why you're kind of ostracized or being silenced. Right? Yeah,
exactly. And
it's the truth. Oh, sorry, man. You're okay. You're fine.
Yeah, that's a little blood.
Yeah,
it's just a flesh wound.
Come on, man. Move.
Look at those graphics.
I know. So lifelike. Come on. Move. I'm gonna have to kill you, man. I'm sorry. Sorry, man. It's your fault.
Exactly.
He would have just moved. He was so paralyzed by fear. So do you deal with a lot of... I know that one of your questions involves kind of the conspiracy theories or sort of the myths that maybe popular or the public has has your discipline, right? Or
if you want to dive into that one, we can.
Yeah. I'm kind of curious to...
So the question is, generally, every domain has this, some kind of, flat earth, anti-vax, whatever, like, I don't know, orange juice cures cancer, whatever it might be. What is that in your field? You have various different historical perspectives. Is there shared conspiracies? Like,
it depends on the subfield. It really does. For Civil War historians, it's kind of the principal one is that the Civil War was not about slavery, and that's a pretty popular one, I would say.
The War of Northern Aggression.
Exactly. Little folks would say it's about states' rights, but one of those states' rights was the right to, own people, right? Conspiracy theories about...
so that's like within your academia, there's very few of those individuals, presumably.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But as soon as you get outside of that domain of expertise.
Right. Yeah. And I would say, this isn't necessarily a conspiracy theory, but what I was just talking about concerning...
What is that?
Mission failure? No. Unacceptable non-military... I didn't do anything.
Blew up?
I don't know. Have you ever had an explosion like that in a lab?
Not like that.
Might as well
Usually they stay in fume hoods.
No, well, I might as well just murder these scientists.
Just revenge.
It's his fault. He was being sloppy in the lab.
So the Civil War is a big one.
That's a big one.
The moon landing never happened. It's presumably.
Yeah, that's a big one. You know, the JFK assassination. That's a big one.
I mean, like, do these ebb and flow, or are they slowly dying? Like, what?
No, I think they're pretty consistent. I think actually, folks who believe that the JFK assassination was undertaken by the government or by more than one shooter, I think that those numbers have actually increased over time.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there's some, you know, I don't know if you would agree with this when it comes to your field, but there's some that have, you know, some credence, or
You
know, that
sometimes
actually
they turn out to be right.
Yeah, I mean, when folks were talking about, I mean, they still talk about this in a sense. Oh, he's trying to kill me now. See?
So you just had to wait.
No, wait. It's later. I'm still gonna fail the mission, right?
No, I think if you kill all them.
Do I kill him? What? Come on, man. You should die. So, for instance, the idea that the U.S. government was somewhat involved in the import of crack cocaine or cocaine into the United States in the late 20th century, you know, at the very least, the state kind of turned a blind eye, right? And so for a long time, you know, that was denied, and the CIA says, no, we had no involvement, which is, of course, what they would say, but historians have kind of agreed that, yeah, there's a lot of evidence to support that. So you know, it might have seemed really outlandish at the time, and maybe to some people it still is outlandish. But there is some truth to it, and people have questions about, you know, the JFK assassination. I'm not necessarily all that invested in those narratives, but you know,
I mean, so
a lot of people weren't satisfied with you know, the reports that were undertaken, the kind of investigations that were undertaken by the federal government, and you know, there are questions. So I think it's healthy to ask those questions. But however, you know, to what end? You know, if you're just asking them just to kind of, you know, it depends on the political project that you're kind of invested in, I suppose.
I would argue that asking the question's not the problem. It's how you're going to deal with the answer. Like, is there something that will change your mind? And if not, there's no point in having this conversation.
Right.
So there's some people that know the answer regardless if they keep asking questions.
Right. So do you deal with something similar?
I mean, any of the anti-vax, any of the, like, the in-person Ask a Scientist, we had one kid come up to us, he's probably like 19 years old, but he's convinced that, you know, he's a fruitarian, so he only eats fruit. That's his entire diet. And the reason people get cancer is because they have a pH balance issue because they don't have enough citric acid.
Okay.
And it's like, there's nothing we could do. And it was me, who's a chemist, which I understand acid and pH. And then it was David Meckes, who's a biomedical science who studies cancer and like knew everything about it. And like nothing we said could convince this person otherwise. Like, they were like, fruitarian diet is the way to go. That's the only thing that's going to cure people. And at some point, I had to end the conversation, like saying, "You are a danger to yourself and the people around you.
Oh wow,
this is not okay." And you don't even. What do you know that we don't know? What information do you have access to that we don't? So, yeah, it definitely happens. I think it's a lot of the health-related things. But also, I mean, climate change is the other big one.
It's a huge one.
That was another fun one. Like, this truck driver was driving through Tallahassee, and he just parked his truck and hung out at First Friday. And he came up to me and he was like, "What's with all this global warming bullshit?" But what ensued was like this 30-minute conversation about, like, you know, just what do we know as scientists? And then finally, I think the thing that struck him most was like, do you think 200 years of us burning stuff and pumping crap into the air has done nothing? And if the answer is no, the question is, how much is it doing? And I think we have a pretty good grasp on that. So it's actually a really fun engagement.
Oh no, I died.
Man, you took a lot of bullets.
I did.
It's pretty amazing.
Bond. He's resilient.
Yeah,
Not
he's got that plot armor going. Absolutely amazing. I mean, so when are you, do you giggle when you see these conspiracy theories? Are you intrigued by them, or is it just kind of an annoyance to the community?
It depends on the conspiracy theory and kind of how potentially damaging it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, a lot of the anti-vax stuff has, it kind of bleeds over into, the realm of politics, obviously,
Yeah.
and history in a sense. And, in the history of medicine, for instance, you do have populations that have been wronged by the U.S.
They're not wrong.
Yeah, they're not wrong, but at the same time, that doesn't necessarily mean that COVID vaccines are gonna, kill you or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's tough to kind of combat some of those when there is something there, but the ways in which people are talking about it or kind of imagining it is so estranged from kind of some of these historical circumstances that might lend credence to what they're talking about, I suppose.
Yeah. No, that's intriguing. I mean, that's definitely a crossing point between history and sciences, because it's hard to forget Tuskegee experiments, but also we cured polio.
Crisis.
So,
No, exactly. Right. Yeah. I'm going to try again.
Yeah, well, let's do it.
Okay.
Let me know if you want to change a game at any point.
Okay. All right. I'm going to try one more time.
One more. You got this.
All right.
So yeah, anyone just joining us, Ask a Scientist Gaming, mediocre gameplay, expert science. Tonight we have expert historian Paul Renfro is happy to answer questions on post-1945 United States history, particularly things like moral panic, carceral state, stranger danger, and what are your other expertise? So I go to your website and try to remember as many buzzwords as I can.
Gender and sexuality, political history, cultural history, that kind of stuff. All these guys.
Did we figure out where the scientist comes from, or is it just kill everyone until?
Yeah, that's a big part of this. Just kill everyone. Kill them all, right? Do you play more recent games? Or I know you said NARC is a big one.
I played Halo Infinite when it first came out. I didn't do the multiplayer online because I cannot commit to the time to be good enough to be competitive. But
how much do you play?
Played through the
a week
campaign. Oh man. So interestingly, since starting Ask a Scientist Gaming, this has eaten up a lot of my video gaming time, which I don't regret. I enjoy doing it and it's fun, but I used to play, I don't know, maybe average an hour a night. But sometimes you get like 3-hour stints depending on when the kids go to sleep.
Yeah.
But lately it's a lot less. I spend a lot of time testing the games that my guests want to play, which is kind of fun because I get to try.
I appreciate you doing that. Yeah.
Well, it's crazy. I tried the Halo 3 last night just to make sure it works, and then I booted it up today, and they're like, "Oh, you have a 30-minute update." I'm like, "Oh, great!
Oh, wow,
awesome."
How is this locked? Oh, I think I need a key card from this guy. Yeah. Okay. Look at me. Problem solving.
Yes. Video games are scientific method.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I think it's underappreciated. That's one thing I convey to my students is you guys all do scientific method all the time, every day. Whether it's dating or video games or whatever.
Oh, how did I get into...
You have information, you make a prediction about how that outcome will happen, and you test it. Hopefully.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have questions about the historical method? Not that there is one.
I didn't know that was a thing. What is historical method? I guess let's start with something broader. So, like, as a historian, like, where do you get your information? How do you compile it, and what do you do with it?
Killed that guy. Well, it really depends on what kind of history you're doing. We mentioned medievalists earlier, so they oftentimes are dealing with one document or a handful of documents, right? And trying to kind of rebuild the world as it was, right? Reconstruct the world as it was for people who lived way back then. And for me, I'm dealing with the 80s and the 90s. I have the exact opposite problem, right? Where I have so much stuff to look at. I have newspaper sources, I have televisual sources, which I mentioned earlier. If you're dealing with even more recent history than you have video games. I guess, I mean, you had video games in the 80s and 90s. They weren't necessarily as prevalent as they are today, or they aren't the industry that they are today. But really, archival sources are where it's at for most historians. So we like to just go to an archive or a set of archives. So I think I visited maybe 13 or 14 archives for my first book, and essentially you're looking at documents, trying to kind of reconstruct, when you're a political historian, reconstruct political debates.
You essentially fly to a library that has a particularly high density of this type of information?
Yeah,
like that's,
basically, yeah. So, I spent a lot of time in Washington, D.C., at the National Archives, National Archives 2, as they call it, and looked at a lot of, policy documents related to folks who were trying to pass policy and legislation pertaining to missing children or stranger danger or that sort of thing. I went to the Vanderbilt Television News Archive and watched a lot of TV news about this issue, and thankfully, you can kind of search this stuff and determine which clips are particularly germane to what you're studying.
I mean, do you need any special credentials to access this, or anyone can do it if they want to?
Anyone can do it, yeah. Anyone can do it. It depends on
the rarity of the items and whatnot.
Right. I mean, yeah, I've never really dealt with any sensitive material in that respect. The National Archives folks are pretty, no offense to them, but their whole process is a little punitive, and they don't want people to steal documents, which is understandable. But the average person is not going there to steal documents. So the whole rigmarole, it's kind of like TSA, going through security and everything, and then trying to demonstrate that you haven't stolen some obscure document from the Reagan administration or whatever.
But you can take photos and make copies.
Yeah.
They allow for that, as long as you don't take the originals.
Yeah, and that's not where the value is. So it's the original document. That's and there are cases of people doing that, but I'm not one of them.
Wasn't there one? Was it FSU where they had a bunch of stuff stolen? When was that?
That was the libraries. Yeah, a library employee. One of very few individuals. Look, they have a no bond sign there. See that? No James Bond allowed. Well,
very specific.
I'm here.
Rule breaker.
I know. Yeah. So I think it was comic books, actually.
Yeah.
That this rare comic books that this guy who worked at the FSU libraries stole, and then he took them to a pawn shop not that far away from here, and he was discovered. He was caught.
I was going to say, unless you have the appropriate person to sell that, that's just not a normal pawn shop.
Well, and this was one of maybe 3 or 4 people who had access to these comic books. I think it was comic books.
Yeah, it's pretty easy to track down.
Yeah, so that's not a good thing to do.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. My health is not great.
I was going to say, is there health pickups in this game? I don't remember.
I mean, I got some armor, but I took a lot of shots. Just need to survive. Oh man. Okay. Now I just gotta make sure there's no explosion or whatever. I don't know if there's anything I can do to prevent that. I hope this isn't on easy mode.
I think the default is normal, but I don't remember what the levels are.
Okay. So I thought I was doing so well, and in a way I was.
Yeah. And blowing up the tanks was limiting you on one of them.
Right. And so I need to, open this. I'll meet what's-his-face. Okay, that little jump. Okay. Meet him, and then I gotta put the mines on these, right?
Yeah, I'm curious if the bad guys indefinitely come if you're not. There we go.
Yeah, I think they might. Okay. For England. For England, Alec.
I like it.
Okay. All right, we gotta go, man. It was a bit tricky, Alec. Half of everything is luck.
Is he still?
Yeah, he's still there. I can't. The other half?
Oh. Oh.
He's so close to the tanks.
Yeah, you might have to kill these guys before it'll let you blow it
Oh
up.
no. Okay. There are just so many of them. So many goons.
Oof. That guy just won't die.
He won't die. Oh no, he's dead. But I don't know if that has anything to do with my mission. Okay, well if he's dead, I can just boom. Okay, how do I get out of here? Oh no.
It's just out the door, right? Ugh.
Yes.
Oh, nice.
I did it.
Victory. Good
Yes.
game. GG's.
All right.
Well done, sir. Release those endorphins.
GG's.
Satisfaction of video gameplay.
What's a GG?
That's a good game.
Oh, good game.
And that's Bowser drinking alcohol. So the Super Nintendo version of Mario Kart, there's two different Bowser animations, one for Japan, one for the US. In the US, he's drinking alcohol. In Japan, he's throwing the alcohol in the air.
Really?
We learned about this during Josh Melko's stream, actually. So we made it one of our emotes. Just kind of fun.
That's so
All right.
interesting.
Do you want to keep playing this, or do you want to go to something else?
No. Let me try another stage.
Yeah.
Another.
No, might as well relive.
Runway. Relive. Okay, I'm gonna start. Okay. Find plane, ignition key, escape in plane. So I guess this is a level. They call them levels or something.
What I encourage you to do is after you're done tonight, go home and look up GoldenEye speedruns. And they beat these levels in 6 seconds. It is
What? How is that
ridiculous.
possible?
They clip through walls. They glitch the game. They run past everyone. It's pretty astounding what they figure out and how they beat these
And
things.
you do that, right? Speedrun?
Yeah, I do for some games. The NARC is the only one that I figured out new stuff. The other one I just follow other people's tutorials for the most part.
Oh, that door leads back into the gas plant. And I guess those goons can't follow me somehow.
Plot armor.
Okay, gotta get more ammo.
I mean, so in terms of, we talked about your path getting to being a historian.
Yes.
In the sciences, we have a tenure process. You need a major federal grant, about 10 publications. You need some invited talks. What does your tenure process look like? Because you guys don't do papers, you do books, and that's a long process.
We do articles, right?
Okay.
And there's a way, or there are ways in which you can get tenure or get promoted with just articles, but in an R1 research 1 department or institution like ours, it's a book basically.
You have to.
Yeah.
So publish as perish is true. It's just it needs to be a book.
Yeah, and in some ways, this is kind of counterintuitive, but it's easier to publish a book than the number of articles you would need to publish in order to get tenure or to get promoted, because you would have to navigate each individual process of several journals. And wait on peer reviews. I don't know if there's a peer review crisis right now in the sciences, but there's a huge peer review crisis in the humanities. Oh look, we got another weapon.
Nice. Look at that.
Yeah, look at that. Just there aren't enough people because of the fact that people are. There aren't enough tenure track jobs. People aren't available to review book manuscripts and article manuscripts. So processes are taking a lot longer. The peer review process is taking a lot longer than it normally would.
I mean, so what does that look like then? Because publishing, I mean, if you go through a standard publisher, it's not a peer review process, right? You have editors and things like that. I mean, is your peer review the community after you've published the book? Like your tenure letters writers have read those books? Like, because you can self-publish on Amazon, right? Like,
yeah, but that's not going to get you tenure.
Yeah, so it has to be an accepted or reputable publisher. I mean, what are the other expectations there?
So,
I mean, if somebody that studies medieval French history reads your book, like, how do they know you're not just making stuff up? I guess is what I'm...
Well, they know that because you do get peer reviewed before the book is kind of accepted for publication.
I see. Okay.
Yeah, so it goes out to readers.
Oh, it does. Okay.
Yeah. It usually goes out to readers before a contract is issued, and that usually involves a proposal and maybe 2 chapters.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, and then you write the book, or sometimes at the acquisition process or at the acquisition stage, you have the full manuscript. And so that is what they read and make make suggestions on how the book should take shape, or what else you should do.
So are those readers employees of the publisher, or they're
they're peers? Right?
Okay, so you'd service that for someone else.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
okay.
And
do you get paid for that?
Not well.
But you do get something.
You do get something. So when it comes to article manuscripts, you don't get anything. You put it on your CV.
Yeah.
But okay, but for books, so I just did this for a major university press, and they said either $250 in books, or half of that, in cash. And I said,
in-store credit. Thank you, publisher.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and so I took the books. I
mean, that's in the sciences. That gets you 1 book.
Okay, that's interesting. Most of our books are $30 or so. I mean, there are books that have a more limited print run that you won't die. That cost more. And sometimes if you have a simultaneous release, a hardcover and a paperback, the hardcover is going to be a lot more, and that usually gets picked up by libraries.
Makes sense.
So that'll be $90 or something like that, and then the paperback will be $29 to $39 or something like that. Oh, I'm dead.
Oof.
That was hard. That was
open. Open field.
I know. I guess there's a way to crouch.
I don't know how much that helps you there.
So dramatic.
That's great. So this is fun. On the chemistry subreddit, sometimes people will post books and just like ridiculously unique books.
Yeah.
There are some that are like, I don't know, silicon NMR in certain environments, and it's like a $10,000 book, because there's 3 of them that exist. Yeah.
$10,000.
Yeah.
Oh, so I had to find the key. Okay, I knew that, but I didn't know that.
Lim hits 57%. I love it. Keeps track of your accuracy.
Yeah, that's not bad, right?
Yeah,
I guess.
I have no idea.
No, that's bad. 32.5. Well, I'm not.
I mean, having not played this in what?
Yeah,
20 some years. We're forgiving on this stream.
Exactly. I'll try this again.
Yeah. Just one more. Flashes back to the golden days of playing games. Just one more, and then it's 3 a.m.
Yeah. Does that ever happen to you?
Oh man, I'm looking forward to when my kids are really into video games. So my 6-year-old now is playing a little bit, like Plants vs. Zombies, and occasionally I'll get her to play some Mario and stuff, but not quite there yet.
What if they don't like video games?
I don't think kids have a choice at this point, right?
Really?
I mean, in terms of the demographics, it's like, I mean, if you include cell phone games under the age of 30, it's like 90% of people play games of some kind.
Wow.
So it has infiltrated all aspects.
Would you consider something like Wordle? Is that a video game?
I would count it.
Oh,
I'm not an elitist or purist in that sense, but anything that has a set of rules and you get endorphin release by being successful, I'm going to call it a video game.
How do I crouch? I have to be able to crouch.
Maybe one of the bumpers or C. The up and downs.
B. Okay, that's change weapons.
Here, I can look it up.
I should be able to crouch, right? I'm aiming there.
Should ask ChatGPT. Press R and then the bottom C button to crouch. What is it?
Is this R?
Is.
R. I think this is R, but...
Oh, that might be...
Oh, am I crouching now? I think I am crouching. Wait, no.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am. Okay,
lower.
perfect.
So what was it? It was down and C?
Yeah. Yeah.
Huh.
R in the bottom C.
Nice.
He died very easily.
Oh, man. See, back when we were kids, we couldn't just Google this. We had to figure this out through trial and error and suffering. I mean, I guess that's an interesting question. So this is the pace of getting information has increased exponentially over the years since the internet has come. I mean, has that been good or bad for the history community?
Yeah, it depends on... I mean, it's great in terms of acquiring information if you're, say, writing a book about a subject. And, you know, yeah, it's a lot easier to Google something than it is to have to look it up. You know, if you didn't know who Harry Truman's vice president was, for instance, it'd be a lot more difficult to look that up. It would take some time, but also, so historians, I think there's this idea among some people that historians just know a lot of facts. And it's true, a lot of them do, but that's kind of not what we do, right? It's more about the broad kind of interpretation of those facts. And I think one reason why so many people dislike history, or so many students say, well, I never really had a great time learning history growing up, it's because they were forced to engage in this kind of rote memorization rather than interpretation, kind of helping to, or trying to understand change over time, weaving these really elaborate narratives. That's the fun part. But yeah, so I think this access to information can help. More readily accessing information can help in that respect, but it's not necessarily going to make you a better historian, or it's not going to necessarily, and it's not going to help you synthesize all that's been written about a certain subject or in a certain field or subfield. And that's kind of what we do in grad school. We have our comprehensive exams kind of involve reading hundreds of books and synthesizing them and kind of determining and demonstrating that we kind of know what the arguments of these books are, what the different kind of fault lines are in a certain literature or a historiography, as we call it. So, these historians say this, these historians say this, and this is where I fall on the issue, or this is where my work will make an intervention. That's kind of what we do. And so, yes, it's easier to maybe access a book. I mean, it most certainly is. You can look up an argument or the introduction of a book fairly easily on Google Books, but it's not going to do that really intense work that you have to do kind of to pass your comps, and that helps you with writing lectures eventually, if that's kind of what you're going to be doing. It helps you when you're writing background on a certain subject, right? That kind of deep work, that's kind of what makes it useful. But so yeah, access to information is more. This easy access to information is helpful in some respects, but it's not going to hopefully make historians obsolete, I suppose.
It's like, good as ChatGPT emphasizing, give me the two contrasting views of the Vietnam War.
Right, exactly. Have you been dealing with that at all, ChatGPT, in your classes?
Not really. Like a lot of my tests are multiple choice, and that's just because I can do statistical analyses. But
Yeah.
I've started to do one thing ChatGPT can't do is process images. So like if you have a graph, like what's the relationship between these two variables? It can't do it.
Yeah.
So I'm working on something right now. I publish in the Journal of Chem Ed occasionally. What I'm working on right now is trying to use exam outcomes on figure-based questions versus non-figure-based questions to see if I can detect ChatGPT cheating.
Oh, wow.
And so that's kind of just a fun side exercise. It's not part of my main research endeavor, but
Yeah.
it's a curiosity. And so I've gone through and taken like my last 7 years of exams and put them through ChatGPT. And it gets anywhere between 45 and 65% when my student average is between 50 and 60. So it's not bad, but like the things it gets wrong is very different than a human behavior.
Yeah.
Like humans get certain things wrong for certain reasons, and ChatGPT does not behave like a human does. So there are differences.
Yeah. So do you find students, from 5 years ago who have cheated?
Not necessarily. I haven't seen a lot of evidence of cheating.
Okay.
I think the fears are overblown. At least on my exams, they have about a minute and a half per question, so I like balance how long you have to take a question versus, your ability to cheat on it. And, I mean, it's one of those things like scientists get this bad rep for having like low scores, but you're a historian. Do you know where the 90 to 100A, 80 to 90B? Do you know where that came from?
No.
Somebody at Harvard just made it up.
Okay.
Like there's no basis in testing theory or anything, right? There's no utility. And in fact, if you read a test with an exam average of 75, it's not necessarily a good exam. The average should be between 50 and 60. And so, yeah, that's something I think about a lot when writing exams. But anyway.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's a bit of a detour. But I was like, where does this system come from? And it's entirely arbitrary. Like that's it.
Huh. Well, in my smaller classes, I don't do exams. I'm not a big fan of exams, but in my big survey class, I kind of have to.
Yeah. You get a certain number, you can't. Yeah.
Yeah, but a lot of folks in my department and beyond are concerned about ChatGPT, so it's giving me some pause, and I'm gonna have to determine precisely how I will proceed, but won't be teaching the survey for the next.
I mean, the other thing we wrestle with is like, I mean, ultimately we want to train them to be good at the future of things, right?
Right.
And if the skill set is no longer what is this on the periodic table, and instead it's how fast can you find what that is?
Yeah.
Like, what skill should we be testing for? What should we be encouraging?
Yeah.
And maybe ChatGPT is the answer to some of those.
Some folks are harnessing ChatGPT in their assignments, and that might be something I have to look into. I don't know anything about it. Nothing.
Well, one I really like is, I mean, a few questions I'll put in there, and like ChatGPT will spew out something that looks like a correct answer, but it's very wrong.
Yeah.
And so you can use that as like a discussion point, like, why is this wrong?
Yeah.
What axioms are getting wrong to make this wrong answer?
Right.
So it's kind of fun in that respect.
Yeah. There's so many examples I've seen on social media of these narratives that ChatGPT spits out that to the untrained eye seem fine, but the details are completely wrong, or just just everything's off about it, or something's off about it.
And that's what was striking to me, because I put in one test question and I do it like 20 times and it'll give me different answers, but they all sound viable. But David Collins in physics had a really fun example of this. He's like, I want to find a reference that describes star formation in such and such magnetic fields. And it's like, oh, here's an interesting paper. And the author list was people he knew, but the paper was entirely made up.
Oh, wow.
And so it made up a reference. And it's like, the thing we don't recognize is ChatGPT is giving you an answer.
Yeah.
Not the right answer. It's giving you an answer.
Yeah.
And that's, I
don't know if you heard about that lawyer who.
Used
Chat. Just made up cases.
And he submitted it. Oh my God.
Yeah. Want to move on to.
Yeah. What do you want to do?
Halo, maybe.
Some Halo.
Yeah. Why not?
All right. Let's switch over to talking heads a little bit. All right. Change systems, because the Xbox probably turned off during that.
Oh, it did.
We'll give it a second.
This is quite a setup.
It's a lot of moving parts. You can understand why I don't play. I have to move all this stuff around.
Yeah.
So if the Xbox turned on. I love the 5 different controllers in front of you.
Yeah. Is that my doing? Is that, because I guess
whatever game you pick,
yeah.
it's we'll do it. So I have a shelf back there with like 25 different versions of controllers at this point.
I'm gonna take a picture of
Oh yes, step back, get the whole setup if you want.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll do that. All right.
It's for your
Green screen too.
yeah, get the whole thing, the experience. Wait for the
tweet it if you don't mind.
Oh no, absolutely. Social media presence. As Twitter slowly dies, or quickly.
Yeah, or you're on it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Have you noticed?
I don't know. I mean, after Elon took over, there was definitely a change in what we were receiving in terms of tweets and whatnot.
Yeah.
And since we're not verified anymore, blue check mark, like our number of views has gone down and things like that. So there's there's been changes.
Yeah, it's interesting that he turned the blue check into a symbol that's not desirable in any way. I mean, it clearly was, and now it's the antithesis. No one wants it. The folks who want it, you kind of want to stay away from.
And low domain, you guys should do a no death run of Battletoads speed run. Are you familiar with Battletoads?
I am not.
It is,
but I'm game. I don't.
It's a game for the Nintendo Entertainment System, and is notorious as one of the hardest games. It's not the hardest, but it's one of the hardest, most popular games. But it's also a very beautiful game. It's surprising what they did with 8-bit entertainment on the NES. Very clever programming. But man, thank you for the comment. We should definitely do a Battletoads speed run. If you stick around, we're going to do a NARC speed run, which was just as good, I promise.
Okay, I'm pressing start.
Yeah, that's the right of the two. So yeah, we're on to Halo 3. We're actually playing this on the Master Chief Collection on the Xbox. So go to campaigns, down to 3.
Just 3?
Yep.
Okay.
And might as well resume.
Oh yeah,
pick up where you left off.
Yeah.
So this one's been maybe 20 years actually since this one came out.
I think
no,
so.
that would have been like 2006.
Yeah, I think I was just starting 2006, 2007, if I recall correctly.
2007.
College.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Aldomain. I apologize. I don't know how to pronounce your name, but I appreciate you dropping by and trying to punish my guests with really hard video games. As if talking about their expertise while playing games was not hard enough. Let's add another variable to it.
They clearly weren't impressed by my GoldenEye playing.
You beat a level. We're going to count that.
I did beat a level. That's right. Yeah. I'll take that.
Yeah. We only celebrate victories.
Yes. But the real test is NARCs.
Yeah, exactly. It's when you're actually timed.
Oh. Isn't it amazing how much, I mean, no offense to GoldenEye, but, there's a less than 10-year difference between these games. Yeah, it's astonishing. This is just so gorgeous.
So do you have anyone in your department that does, like, history of comic books, video games, TV, any of the modern stuff?
I do some TV history, but no, not really. But they should. There's a historian by the name of Drew McKevitt at Louisiana Tech, and he wrote this great piece in this book, this edited collection about the U.S. wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, and he made the argument, and I thought it was just fantastic, that we really need to take video games seriously as a source because they're so popular, and because if you're a diplomatic historian, for instance, or a historian of the U.S. wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, and the global war on terror more broadly, RB, where's RB? Oh, there we go. Then this is how a lot of people's ideas about that war and about wars generally are shaped, right?
Yeah.
Through Call of Duty and all that stuff. I don't know that much about those games, but they certainly do shape people's understandings. Of combat, I guess.
Like, that is most people's engagement with this information, right? Between movies and TV and video games. That is where Like, make no mistake, Top Gun releasing, if recruited for the Air Force, like that's a very real thing. That's intense.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a conversation I had with Julianne Grasso in music, and she studies like video game music.
Okay.
And it's
yeah.
one of those things
This is
that
Final Fantasy.
yeah, and it's not necessarily, I mean, respected by, you know, senior like traditionalists in the field, but video games have surpassed every other domain of entertainment in
Right.
terms of like per dollar and per time
Right.
watched and played. So
Yeah, I mean, it's a what? Several, I mean, how many billions?
yeah, I don't even want to put an estimate on that,
No.
but I mean, it's more than movies, which is astounding.
Right.
You have like Marvel movies making billions of dollars, and video games absolutely dwarf that and have since like 2005.
Wow.
So
Is it because games are so expensive, or does that have something to do with it?
I mean, I think it's just the sheer popularity. I mean, if somebody owns a gaming system, they own, you know, probably what, an average a dozen games for that system. Not to mention cell phone games. I mean, the number of people that play Bejeweled or, you know, Wordle or
Candy
whatever
Crush.
it might be.
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
I mean, even at, you know, $2 a game, if it's a million people,
Right.
it adds up very, very quickly.
Yeah.
See, I'll be intrigued by your experience with NARC. See if this completely changed research domains, and now you're like war on drugs and video games.
Yeah.
Let's study this.
I have a friend and colleague who has a book about DARE coming out, DARE Drug Abuse Resistance Education, and I wonder if he's familiar with.
Oh my God, he should be.
Yeah.
It has the license plate that says "Don't do drugs."
Yeah. Just say no.
Dare. Oh my God. I mean, I've seen some of the research on that in terms of efficacy in preventing drug
low.
use. It actually encourages drug use in some respects.
Teaches folks about.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the mistakes that's cited a lot is that it tried to make all drugs equally bad.
Yeah.
Which was a mistake, because I'm like, oh, I smoked weed and I had the munchies. Heroin
You will
must
die.
be okay too.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, they lied to me about weed.
Right.
Yeah.
That's so interesting.
I'm curious.
Well, I think it still exists, right? As a program?
I
Maybe
honestly
not.
don't know. I would be appalled if they tried to put my kids in a program like that. That's just demonstrably bad.
Yeah.
It's like, I think something similar with Alcoholics Anonymous. Like,
Yeah.
their recidivism rate is higher than many other programs. So
I think the efficacy rate is, I want to say 12%.
man,
Oh, that's my friend. I'm sorry, man. They're doing all the work.
yeah.
That's okay.
So does this bring you back? Is this
Yeah, we played this a lot in college.
you played multiplayer or the campaign
Yeah,
mode?
multiplayer. Yeah. I never had the patience for but this is fun.
Yeah, I mean, we could go on and try multiplayer, but you would get absolutely destroyed, because the only people still playing this game online are the diehards that have played for tens of thousands of hours.
I would always get just demolished
Yeah.
by my friends, and
Certain level of dedication.
it was online compatible, right?
Yep.
And
Yeah.
that was kind of revolutionary too, right? This was pretty revolutionary as
I
a
think so. Halo 2 was the first one to do Xbox Live,
Okay.
where it was actually connected via an Xbox server, and then this one had. I think this was one of the first one to do like shared communication channels and things like that.
wow.
But yeah, we lived the golden age of video game expansion, so I can't complain on that front.
Are we in a golden age now?
I doubt it. Because at this point, one of the critiques is, how many Call of Duties do you need to release where it's the same game over and over again? Like the true revolutionary games are much more few and far between, and the ones that are like splash in the pan. There's a game called Stray that came out recently that was super popular. It was just like you as a stray cat walking around the world, and that was super popular for about 30 minutes, and then it disappeared. So yeah, it's intriguing to watch it unfold. And at this point, I'm a tourist because I'm not a dedicated gamer anymore. But anyway, speaking of like domains of expertise, so you are a post-1945 U.S. history.
Yes.
Like there's we talked about particular domains. There's medieval. There's Renaissance. Like, what is the demarcation? Like 1945 is post-World War II.
Sure.
Right. But you also talked about a 1968 class. Like what why 1968? And does the community agree on these, or is it just kind of an unspoken, here's major milestones?
It's a great question, yeah. I mean, 68...
Like, what is that?
I just kind of, well, so
It's like middle of Vietnam War.
So, yeah, some folks view it as the end of the classical phase of the civil rights movement.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
Okay.
so, you know, in some accounts, really the African American freedom struggle begins in 54-ish, you know, and then ends around 68. That's when MLK is assassinated. That's when you have this really important election, not necessarily a realigning election, but you know, Nixon wins. You have, and that for some people, and I don't necessarily agree with this interpretation, but that represents a backlash against the civil rights movement. But no, this is exactly what we argue about, right, all the time. You know, the periodization is just, and so many people we talk about. Oh no, there's some chaos going on. So many people, you know, if they're trying to write a big trade book, they want to focus on a decade, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, decades they're not neat. Or I guess historical moments are not, you know, neat necessarily. So you can't contain everything within 10 years, right? So that's kind of an arbitrary sort of way to define a moment, but you still have to do it, right?
Yeah.
So when you're talking about the 70s, you know, people have certain perceptions of the 70s or the 60s, but it's not as if the 60s ended in 1969, 1970, right? So, yeah, these are the sorts of, oh no, I'm out of ammo. These are the sorts of debates that people have about moments, processes, you know, when, I mean, it's not unlike or not dissimilar to what you were talking about concerning assigning causative value to a particular individual or kind of election, or, you know, saying Sarah Palin is the reason things are bad or whatever. You know, so some people really find the year 1968 to be very important. And globally, I mean, you have all these different revolutions, all these different uprisings happening in that moment. So people point to that. But for other people, 1980 is really important. For other people, 1965 is really important, right, with the civil rights, with the Voting Rights Act. And oh no, I'm deceased, I think.
No worries.
I mean, yeah, but you know, so that's a great question.
So it's contentious, but there are some like milestones that are agreed on. Like presumably 1945 in U.S. history is a very clear delineation line. In recent history, I mean, if I had to guess, like 9/11, obviously 2001 is a clear shift in paradigm. COVID is going to be another landmark. Are there others that you've seen recently that are like, you're going to be like 50 years from now, here's where people will draw a line?
Again, historians are really bad.
You don't want to
prognosticate.
You're on a Twitch stream playing video games. You can prognosticate all you want. No one will hold you accountable. Literally, our dozens of viewers will be furious at you 50 years from now. But for my curiosity,
I think 2016 would be a big one, right? Pre-COVID. You know, election years tend to be
Trump election.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Huge.
That's a paradigm shift.
Oh, totally. I think it, in many ways, as I said, historians were not expecting that at all. A lot of political scientists weren't. In fact, I'd say that was the dominant view, and I think it destabilized a lot of what people believed about that moment.
I was going to say the like global perception of the U.S. changed dramatically.
Totally,
that night, that was overnight. Just
oh yeah, and you know, I'm again kind of more in the continuity camp. I mean, you do see a lot of policy continuities between even Obama and Trump, but I think in terms of perception, a lot of people thought, well, okay, so the United States just elected his first black president, and people love Obama globally, and he represented this for a lot of people a shift from the Bush era and all of the everything that was wrong with the Bush era and the global war on terror. But you know, he also continued all those policies, but many of those policies in some ways kind of intensified them. But I think in the global imagination, if there is such a thing, for a lot of folks, they were thinking, okay, well, this is good. The U.S. is maybe getting its act together and maybe approaching something close to socialized medicine, which it didn't. But in some people's minds, Obamacare was a step in the right direction. But then Trump kind of represents this complete.
The contrast
reversal,
to the prior,
right? And for some people, it's a backlash to the Obama years. And, Ta-Nehisi Coates calls Trump the first white president. He's the first white president, kind of after a black president, basically. So, in that way, he kind of embodied many of these really dark forces in American life and American history. But so I think 16 is incredibly important, but it's not as neat as I've been kind of suggesting here. I suppose. But I think 2020 huge, not just because of COVID, but because of the election and January 6th. So those, that'll all. I think also 2020. The withdrawal from Afghanistan, that'll be really big too.
Yeah. I mean, so in terms of you looking at post tenure, where you go next? So you've done Stranger Danger, you've covered. You got a book now in works. It was Ryan White.
Yeah.
Is that the HIV/AIDS? In the 1980s, which we should definitely get back to. But
sure.
Before doing that, what's your next step? What's what are you looking? What's the next Paul Renfro book going to be?
Well, so the Ryan White book is the next book.
Okay, that's not out yet. That's
not out yet. Okay. Yeah, it is in the works. It is actually, we talked about the peer review process. The manuscript is out with readers right now, so
nice.
Hopefully they will like it. Thank you.
Step one.
Yeah, exactly. Hopefully they'll like it. And it's nerve-wracking, but I do like that.
So you have the whole book, or you have chapters?
Yeah, I have the whole. So it's under contract now. So it went out with readers. This was, I guess, 2 chapters and a proposal went out with readers, or 2 readers, 2 years ago, I want to say. And in the interim, I signed a contract with the University of North Carolina Press.
Yeah.
And I have been writing the book, and I had those 2 chapters kind of in the can, and I had 5 others that I needed to write, so I wrote those, and that doesn't include Von Johnson before he's captured. That doesn't include the intro and the conclusion. But
so how useful was the reader feedback on that? Did they give you anything?
Yeah.
What does that look like? I've never been in the process of this in a book. But is it broad sweeping statements, or is it specifics, or what is your feedback look like?
At that stage, kind of broader conceptual stuff. So one reader really wanted me to focus more on race and whiteness and Ryan White's whiteness. And that wasn't something I really emphasized as much in the chapters that how do I change weapons? Let's see.
I think it's the yellow
there we go.
Y button.
Oh, yeah, nice.
And then if you push down the left joystick, I think you get a zoom. Or maybe try the other joystick.
Crouch.
There you go.
All right. Fantastic.
All right. But it was useful feedback. Was there anything you were like, this is just dumb? I don't. You don't have to say that on the record, but I get reviews. I got one today that I'm just like, I don't agree with this reviewer. I fundamentally disagree with how this should be presented.
Yeah. So that's always a concern, right? And I guess, when it depends on how the reader, in my mind, is approaching the report. So when it comes to books, especially, it can be really frustrating because it's taken so long to write the damn thing, and then you will sometimes get a report, and this happened actually, no, this didn't really happen with my first book. My first book, I got a bad report at the acquisition stage, and so that kind of prevented me from proceeding with one press, but that's in the past.
So the editor just says this feedback was negative enough. We're not going to invest in
Yeah, this one was bad. It was actually, I sometimes assign this in my grad classes. I have just to demonstrate. Well, first of all, I think it was a really unfair report, and
I was going to say, in retrospect, was it honest or was it?
No, it was very unfair.
Okay.
It almost seemed like the person was trying to kill the project, and
Wow.
not. Yeah, and this is for Stranger Danger. And yeah, so that was not useful. Essentially, basically, this person just disagreed with all of the conclusions I had made, and basically how I wrote the thing and everything. I mean, just not constructive from the get go. So that's frustrating, especially for a junior scholar who was looking to
get tenure,
to get a tenure track job at that stage. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So I was still a postdoc. So, but. Yeah, if someone's approaching it in good faith and really trying to improve the project rather than just change the project and basically tell the author how they would have written the book.
I mean, that's infuriating.
Yeah,
because that's like they're not reviewing the book that's written. They're reviewing the book they want to see.
Yeah,
and we have the same thing in our publications.
Oh,
it's
interesting.
Infuriating.
Yeah.
It's like, what do you do? All right. Huggy Beer, welcome back to the stream. It's good to see you. Welcome back. We have historian Paul Renfro here talking about many things, post-1945 U.S. politics and history, sexuality, stranger danger, HIV/AIDS response in the 80s. But Huggy Beer has redeemed a request of factoid.
Okay.
So if you would like to drop a knowledge bomb. Also, we should do a prediction because I've completely neglected those all night.
Okay.
We've just been having fun shooting the shit while playing some first-person shooters.
Yes.
But Huggy Beer, it's always a pleasure. Welcome back. Our first historian on Ask a Scientist Gaming.
All right.
I debated whether I should change the name to like Ask an Academic or something, but I've had like program officers from the NIH and like people from Army Research Laboratory. So, yeah.
Where's my crew?
So, sorry, what's your factoid?
Yeah.
Huggy Beer wants some knowledge.
Do you want a personal factoid? Do you want a...
Huggy Beer, it's up to you. Do you want personal
yeah, exactly.
or history,
an academic
based
factoid? I have all of them.
Let's start with an academic one.
Okay. So this comes from my book. In a 1987 Roper poll, 76% of children, I think I alluded to this earlier, noted that, and I'm quoting here, they were very concerned about kidnapping, making it the most common fear in that survey, beating out both nuclear war and the spread of AIDS.
This reminds me, I don't know where I saw this. I'm sure it was a Reddit thread, but it was like, based on my childhood, I was much more concerned that I would be on fire and have to stop, drop, and roll than was actually at risk of happening.
Yeah.
And the same thing happened with Stranger Danger, which we should dive into. But let's start that discussion with a prediction.
Yes.
So we haven't done any predictions yet tonight, but we definitely need to because Paul's got some interesting ones here for, the casual reader can make a guess on these. All right, so the question, we're going to put up a prediction right now. Those of you not familiar with the stream, Ask Scientist Gaming, we have predictions. We don't do predictions in the traditional sense of Twitch where people like, is Paul going to beat this level? Instead, we do questions based on their expertise. And so every one of my guests come up with, oh no, we learned from Bond. You will beat this eventually.
That's true. I don't know where my crew is.
But
where's my crew?
we like to have questions related to the guest's expertise. So if you're not following us, click the follow button. You're going to get 300 standard internet units. They are useless outside of this channel. In fact, in this channel, they're not particularly useful unless you want to make us drink or want to request a factoid. But nonetheless, it's fun to answer these questions. And so the question we have now at the top of your screen, it's the top of your chat, click the predict button. The question is number of U.S. kids taken by strangers annually. And so this is a fairly consistent statistic over the last decade or so.
Yeah, more than that, yeah.
So the question is less than 300 or greater than 300. I will give you a hint. The answer is not exactly 300. So it's going to be one of those two options. Make your predictions now. Bet as many standard internet units as you want, depending on your degree of confidence. And so, Paul, you might not be familiar with these predictions, but they have these internet points that they gain by watching the stream. And so they can answer the question one of the two options, but they can change the magnitude of their confidence in it based on how many points which is something I've thought about for like testing in classes, like how confident are you? Are you going to risk more points or less points? It's an interesting game theory. But the question is, number of U.S. kids taken by strangers annually. Less than 300 or greater than 300? Oh wow, you guys have about a minute, so make your predictions now. Again, if you're not following, click follow. Use your internet points to gamble on this question, depending on your degree of confidence. Click that predict button, and you can bet as much of the standard internet units as you'd like. Note you are on Ask a Scientist honor policy, so don't look up the answer on Google or ChatGPT. I'd be curious what ChatGPT gives you on this one.
Oh yeah.
So I encourage you to just go there. You can use like your Google login and just go there and just like copy and paste a question and just look at the answer. The first time I've dove into this was the last couple weeks, and it's been eye-opening in terms of like, what is the power of this?
Yeah.
Like, well, what is it good at? What is it bad at? And it's been really intriguing to see that.
For sure.
All right, about 10 seconds left. Number of U.S. kids taken by strangers annually, less than 300, greater than 300. All right, Paul, what is the answer?
It is less than 300.
So what's the actual number?
So it varies, but it's safe to say it's about 100 or maybe even a little less.
I mean, so this is by strangers. So
Yes.
the number of kids kidnapped annually total, non-stranger and stranger,
It's actually quite high. So it's, so for missing children, the number is something like 800,000, but that includes runaways and all types of kidnapping, most of which are perpetrated by parents or acquaintances.
And only 100 of those are strangers.
Right, right.
Which, again, we've been led to believe it's very different than that. Anyone that grew up in the 80s and 90s. I mean, so you're an expert in this domain, which is, well, we'll start with, like, when researching this is a very heavy topic.
Yeah.
Right? Like, does that weigh on you? Is this something, or is it a relief that you know that it's artificial? Like, what does it do for you personally?
I would say the latter, and, I have some historical distance also, so that helps.
You're not a 10-year-old, yeah.
And it's the recent past, but it still is the past.
Yeah.
And many of these, these cases are really, really harrowing, but there were so few of these kind of stranger kidnappings that that enabled me to have some perspective, I guess, or to not to get too bogged down or too concerned with the subject matter. But this is a debate that a lot of historians have, or these are questions that they deal with a lot. If you're researching, slavery, for instance, how do you kind of keep some distance? How do you, how does that not weigh on you? And people have different approaches. Some folks try to kind of balance their historical work with, activism, and that's their way of sort of balancing, these things. Trying to ensure that you're actually kind of making a tangible difference. Not that your historical work isn't gonna make a difference, this scholarship, but actually engaging in some sort of charity work or volunteer work or some sort of activism that maybe whose benefits are easily sort of are clearly visible, I suppose, in ways that maybe they aren't in the scholarly realm.
I mean, so going back to our prediction here, it's clearly an overblown scare, but there are specific examples. And so in your book, I apologize, I did not read your book.
What?
I talked to my wife and I was like, how badass would it be if I read Paul's book before he came here? But ultimately, I apologize.
No, it's okay.
But you do talk about a few specific examples in the book, and there was one key early one. Yeah. I don't remember the name of it. I think it's your cover art. Is that the...
So those are stock images, actually.
Oh, they are?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But there was one particular one that like triggered or was a key stepping stone in triggering this panic?
Yeah, the Eitan Pates case was a really big one in Manhattan in 1979. So this took place in the midst of this major kind of set of crises for New York, economic crises, political crises, And let's see, where's this guy? And obviously this took place in the financial and kind of cultural capital of the United States. And one really sort of interesting component of this, and one reason that this case was so famous or so well known, is because Eitan's father was a photographer, and that led to all of these different images being readily available, and
Oh, wow.
and that
Quality images.
very high
captured.
quality images, and
That is-
these beautiful pictures, and these were kind of ready for prime time, and they were used in newspapers, in TV. Let's see, how do I get this guy
That is
on TV?
astounding.
Yeah.
But I've heard that. Sorry to detour a little bit. But
No.
If Anne Frank were ugly, would her story be as pronounced as it was?
Interesting,
And
yeah.
it's an important question, because it
Right.
does matter, and then the quality of photography matters.
Right.
I wasn't. Wow.
Yeah, and that speaks also to the kind of identity of Eitan and other similar sorts of victims, right? So he and basically all the other young people who go missing and become really famous kind of in this strange way. They're almost exclusively white and middle class and photogenic, right?
Yeah.
And so that kind of speaks to this question of, or it opens up the question of, who gets to be a victim, who gets to be sort of vulnerable or innocent, right?
Yeah.
So
To
go
quote
ahead.
Eminem, like, middle America, now it's a tragedy. Now
Now
it's sad to see. Yep.
An upper class city having this happening.
Yeah. Brilliant.
So good.
So another prominent example. So this hits a bit close to home to me, literally. You probably covered this in your book, but Jacob Wetterling,
Yeah.
Minnesota.
Yeah.
So he was St. Joe, Minnesota. I grew up in St. Cloud, about 20
yeah.
minutes away from there.
Wow,
And I was
yeah.
about the same age as him.
Wow. Okay.
And that was another unique example, because
Yeah.
there was 2 kids, there was 1 witness, and this was a huge story.
Oh, absolutely.
And I don't know if you covered it in this book, but it
I
was
do.
actually resolved
Yeah.
fairly recently, which
Yeah.
is crazy. That's impossible, basically,
Right.
statistically.
Yeah, I don't know if you listen to that podcast, In the Dark, all about it. Yeah, so I think it was in 2016 that this case was finally resolved, and brought some closure to the Wetterling family. But Patty Wetterling, his mother, is a very interesting figure, because she initially was very much, and I kind of talk a bit about this in the book. Oh no, I'm out of ammo. I need to switch weapons. She was very gung-ho about taking these more kind of carceral measures. Nice. Hope I murdered. Yes, I murdered him. These carceral measures to kind of address this crisis or perceived crisis. So she was a big fan of the kind of sex offense registry that his name was emblazoned upon, right? Or the legislation that led to the development and maintenance of sex offense registries throughout the United States. So the infamous Clinton crime bill of '94 contained this Jacob Wetterling Crimes Against Children and Violent Offender Registration Act, I believe is what it was called. And that mandated the creation creation and maintenance of sex offense registries by every state. Let's see, I think, did I beat it?
Yeah, I think you're in the right spot.
All right. All right.
There we go.
Fantastic.
Prediction success.
Yeah, and so Patty Wetterling was a big proponent of this initially, and as the years went on, she actually became an opponent. She recognized that this
She
actually
changed her mind.
She changed her mind. She
Wow.
said, "Okay, this is actually not working.
Yeah.
This is, in fact, kind of giving people a false sense of security when it comes to child sex abuse or sexual exploitation more generally, and we need to take a different approach." Essentially, for her and for other opponents of sex offense registries, it kind of reinforces the stranger danger myth by placing the threat kind of outside of the home and the trusted family or the trusted institution, saying, okay, these are the people you need to look out for, right? When in fact you're far more likely to be abused by someone in the household or someone in your church or your school.
I mean, so that's profound for me because she had a life-changing event when her son was taken, and
Yeah,
obviously
yeah.
but she changed her mind, and she recognized that this thing was such a unique occurrence.
Right.
I mean, props to her for just reflecting on that and making a decision to change her mind, especially since her entire like public identity was based on that assumption.
Yeah.
And that's incredible because she ran for office several times too,
Did,
right?
yeah,
Which I don't know if she actually got elected, but it
Yeah, I
was.
don't think so, but yeah, an interesting individual for sure.
All right, so we'll revisit that again. We have 2 milestones in the Stranger Danger like timeline, but Mezquesa has redeemed a request to factoid.
Okay.
So if you have another
All right.
one,
Yes.
we're excited to.
Should we go with the academic one or?
I don't know. Mez, what do you want? Do you want academic or do you want a personal one? We can learn about Paul, or we can go after something.
I'm not that interesting, but I tried to pick some interesting ones.
Lori, welcome back to the stream. It's good to see you. So Paul's not drinking tonight. I'm drinking for 2 actually, and so he's drinking some LaCroix Limoncello, which is an interesting flavor. I'd actually never had it before, but I've had
a good mixer.
No, it is.
Okay,
I
good,
looked up
good.
online, so I look up. Is there anything we can add? Oh, they want a personal.
Oh, all right.
But yeah, I did a mixer where I did Grand Marnier with some rum with some LaCroix sparkling water, and it's pretty good. It was a good drink tonight, so thank you, Laurie.
So personal factoid. Is this for me? This.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
That's yours if you want it.
Fantastic. Yeah. So we were talking a bit about kind of milestones, historical markers. I was actually born on September 11th. 1987, and so I was 14 on September 11th, 2001.
Happy birthday.
I know, exactly. And that, I think, had kind of going back to your question about, how did I get here? This, I think, informed my interest in that moment and in recent U.S. history. And in fact, I teach a course on the U.S. in the 21st century. And as you noted, 9/11 is this huge turning point kind of in that class. And students, this always pains me to say, but students who are coming into college now were born in 2005.
Yeah.
So they have obviously no idea. I mean, they've heard of 9/11, I'm sure, but they didn't experience it like I did. And so that, to kind of recreate that world and to give them a sense of just how important this was, I think is really, really significant for them. And it gives them a sense of kind of the world that that those who experienced it kind of grew up with, and that maybe is the power of history.
So fun historical factoid related to that. Next year, my freshman Gen Chem students will officially be younger than my Yahoo Mail email account. If you want to feel old,
There you go.
That's the threshold. I started it
go.
in 2006.
Nice.
All right. Mez, I hope that was a great factoid for you. If not, keep buying factoids by all means. Lori, also a mixologist. No, when guests come on and they ask me about drinks, I literally go to Google and say, what is this drink and what should I buy, and put it together. So I steal from others. Maybe I should ask ChatGPT about what to mix with LaCroix, but yeah, we do our best.
Okay.
All right, so back to Stranger Danger. It was this overblown, like, strangers are going to snatch you in the street kind of thing, and it caused a lot of political turbulence and things like that. And major milestones you mentioned. I apologize, I forgot the first kid's name.
Eitan Pates.
Pates, okay, and then Jacob Wetterling. Are there other?
Yeah, Adam Walsh, big one here in Florida. His father was John Walsh, and he went on to host America's Most Wanted, and met with every U.S. president from Reagan to Obama. I don't know if he's met with I think he did meet with Trump, but I'm not exactly sure. But he was and I think remains kind of very influential in this issue. So that's a big one. I did my PhD at the University of Iowa, so not far from Minnesota, and Jacob Wetterling, but also one reason I got interested in this subject, well, first I kind of grew up under, again, the the stranger danger regime that I kind of talk about. But the Iowa paperboy cases were enormous in the 80s, especially in Iowa, obviously, as people there kind of used them or understood them as evidence of cultural and regional and maybe national decline. And that, it kind of investigated that, or not investigated, but analyzed that in one chapter of my book, one chapter of my dissertation, which became my book. Yeah, I mean, Kevin Collins in San Francisco, that's a big one. There were anxieties about gay predators snatching Kevin Collins. And then you have in the 90s other cases that, again, become kind of the names that get enshrined in legislation. The Jacob Wetterling case happens in 1989, but Polly Klaas is a big one. She was murdered, abducted and murdered in Petaluma, California in 1993, and her name is invoked again and again by Bill Clinton and others to kind of justify kind of carceral responses to these cases, which again are very rare. Megan Conca is another example. She becomes the namesake of Megan's Law, first in New Jersey and elsewhere, and on the federal level. And this requires community notification for people who are particular sex offenders or people who are deemed sex offenders.
I mean, so in retrospect, looking at all these changes, I mean, have they been overall for the good, or has it been, I mean, you talk about the carceral state, and this is a contributor to that. I mean, was this for the good or I mean, that's a heavy question. That might be unfair to ask you.
I'm very critical in the book. I'm critical of some of these measures. I think it should give anyone pause because, first of all, none of these have done anything in terms of kind of lowering rates of
it's like the death penalty, right? It doesn't actually prevent crime,
right? And so if that's your metric, then it's a failure, it's right? But also, if you have a sex offense registry in the U.S. that is about the size of the city of Jacksonville, which is the most populous city in the state of Florida, which is the third largest state in the country, I think that should give anyone pause to say, well, what does that mean? I
was going to say, what does that translate to? 1 out of every 300 people is a sex offender, according to that list, or something like that? Yeah.
And the truth is, the people who are more likely to perpetrate those sorts of offenses are not on the list. They're just not on the list.
Yeah.
They go undetected. They're not criminalized. So I think it precludes a more nuanced and thoughtful conversation about a really difficult subject. But if we're actually committed to ending sexual violence, then it's something that we need to do. But we're definitely not at that point right now.
Yeah, well, and the policies that are implemented aren't actually addressing that. They're like punitive, right? As you described earlier, they're revenge-based rather than actually addressing issues at hand.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so drifting away from stranger danger. I mean, this is a weird stream because we have to balance. Like, we're playing video games, I'm drinking alcohol, and we're talking about very heavy topics. In fact, Marty Swanbrow Becker is an expert he's in the education department, and he studies suicide and suicide prevention. And he came on stream, and we have to talk about these heavy things.
I'm glad it's not just me.
No. It's an interesting balance, but like you have other topics that aren't necessarily as heavy, and so I'm going to appreciate Huggy Beer right here for bringing us to something more lighthearted. Did we already talk about satanic panic? Because that was a moral, like, let's react to. I mean, have you looked into that portion of history?
Yeah, so it is essentially unfolding at the same time as a stranger danger panic. So they're intersecting, I would say, but one is a lot more. It's more obvious, I suppose, in terms of kind of what the anxieties were. I think it's harder, and hopefully I achieve this in the book. It's harder to make the argument that stranger danger as a panic is a reflection of larger sorts of cultural and political anxieties concerning, centered on the family and the child at the heart of that family. But when it comes to the satanic ritual abuse panic, it's so clearly a response to anxieties about feminism and the family, because a lot of these incidents or perceived incidents center on daycare centers. And so as more and more women are entering the workforce in the 1970s, I mean, obviously women have always worked, but this is more visible in this moment. There are these fears that, well, okay, you're sending your kids to daycare now, they're going to get abused, and it's your fault, essentially.
Yep.
So that's the subtext and sometimes the text, right? And so this also intersects with other things. I mean, there's this whole crisis of parental authority and institutional authority in the 70s and into the 80s. And one reason I think Reagan resonates with a lot of people is because he, in essence, kind of promises to reassert familial authority, institutional authority, parental authority. And you see that through, I mean, he raises the minimum drinking age, for instance, to 21. And I always tell my students they have Reagan to thank for that, right? They don't like that.
You're not wrong.
Yeah.
You can join the military, but don't drink.
Exactly. How do I open this? Yeah, so there's also, and of course this is a bipartisan affair, you have Tipper Gore and the Parents Music Resource Center, going after music with supposedly satanic themes by Ozzy Osbourne and Twisted Sister. Yeah.
Have you seen the
John Denver?
Have you seen the Dee Snider testimony?
Yeah.
Oh my God!
Isn't it great? Isn't it great?
No one would expect that,
Right.
but he's just so eloquent.
Right.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
It was. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So they thought they were going to steamroll him, and he just delivered it. Yeah.
And of course, we talked a bit about the war on drugs, and we're gonna play NARC later. That's a clear sort of expression of those anxieties too. So, yeah, a lot of panics going on at this moment.
Go Haku. Apologies, I'm lost. Anne Frank being ugly and stranger danger. Paul, welcome to Ask a Scientist Gaming, where we journey through everything, and it is pretty intense. Huggy Beer, how did Dungeons and Dragons get folded in? My mom threw out all my D&D stuff. Oh, I'm sorry, Huggy Beer.
Yeah, it was
That
understood
sucks.
to be satanic, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it has demons and whatnot, and dragons, and clearly it's wrong.
And are you familiar with Mazes and Monsters? The film starring Tom Hanks, I believe it was a made-for-TV film, and it dramatized an actual case of a young man who I think went to college early. He was a prodigy, and he went to Michigan State, and they have, you might know this, they have, I guess, tunnels underneath Michigan State. And he got trapped in the tunnels or lost in the tunnels, and he died. And I think his parents and others blamed it on Dungeons and Dragons. And I guess there's this whole, I've never played Dungeons and Dragons, but there's this, is it a kind of a slave and master dynamic in there? Or, okay, so
it's a dungeon master.
Yeah. So that made a lot of people anxious, and so people connected that to Satanism. I'm lost here. Where do I go?
Complete misunderstanding.
Yeah.
Blown out of proportion.
Yeah. Were you a D&D?
Huggy Beer, I'm sorry. So I wasn't D&D. My brother played D&D a bunch, so I'm familiar with the game, and the recent movie is actually spectacular if anyone's interested. It's pretty lighthearted and fun, but I'm very sorry, Huggy Beer, because that D&D stuff is probably worth a lot of money now. So rub salt in the wound. I apologize. I think that...
Is this it? Oh, wait, I already came this
through here.
That guy was trying to open the other door.
Man, if you were playing Halo 1 or Halo 2, I would be useful, but Halo 3, I have nothing to offer you. I apologize.
Come on, man.
Go Haku. I apologize you're not being able to follow, but we're talking about stranger danger and how it was very overblown, the actual prevalence of kidnapping. In fact, we just had a factoid on this. The number of U.S. kids taken by strangers annually is something on the order of 100. And so I guess that comes down to less than 1% of the actual kidnappings are actually stranger related. Mostly it's a family member of some kind. Speaking of which, let's transition to this one. Like, and I like this question, and I have a specific movie I want to bring up, whether you've seen it or not. But what movie or TV show gets your discipline right or wrong? And so this could be twofold, right? This could be what depicts a historian in an accurate way, like is National Treasure what you live your life as? Or what historical event is captured in a very terrible way, like, say, Braveheart, which is not accurate at all. So
Right.
what gets it right? What gets it wrong? What are your favorites? What do you sit through that you just are disgusted, and what are you genuinely excited about?
So yeah, National Treasure, wrong. It's not what we. It's not what we do.
But it's what you wish you did.
Yes, I wish I was stealing the Declaration of Independence. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so sexy, the narrative, but
Yeah.
historians don't do that. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen.
Ancient Aliens is really bad.
Oh man, the entire History Channel went to shit.
Yeah.
It used to be great when we were younger, and then
Yeah.
it just Ancient Aliens, yeah.
And a pretty niche one in terms of getting it right, I think. So I have a chapter in my book about the Atlanta youth murders, and the Netflix film or miniseries Mindhunter is actually quite good on the sort of class dynamics and the racial dynamics of the Atlanta youth abductions and murders. I don't know if they did primary research to kind of get at some of this, but they really capture some of the stuff that you wouldn't expect a program like that to really capture. So kudos to them for that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And you've seen it and you're like,
Nice.
yeah, that's the way to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, so one of the ones I'm going to bring up, and I learned about this fairly recently, is there's a recent movie called Sound of Freedom. I don't know if you've heard about this at all.
Yes.
The child trafficking movie.
Yes, I will not be seeing this.
Like, there's a lot of
Jim
people
Caviezel.
excited about it because it's like, I don't know, celebratory action hero and like conspiracy addressing like children being trafficked through pizza parlor basements or something like that. But like the experts are opposed to it because it doesn't accurately capture what child trafficking looks like. I mean,
Yeah.
have you looked into this? Have you?
So yeah, it reminds me a lot of Taken, the film franchise starring Liam Neeson. So I think it's an even more sensational version of that, or sensationalized version of that, and it's got kind of Q and Pizzagate fingerprints all over it. So I think a lot of the arguments about missing children and kind of trafficking that you saw in the 80s and 90s just sort of mutated or didn't mutate and are now finding expression in these sorts of texts and in movements like QAnon and this kind of broader Save Our Children sort of sensibility that you see in legislation all over the country and in rhetoric. So, yeah, I've looked into it. I just don't want to see it.
Yeah, well, I read some of the like commentary from both sides, and there's something like celebratory about like we did it, we saved the kids, and that's what people really like. They want to come out of the movie feeling that way.
Right.
But one of the issues of like experts have critiqued about it is that it's conveying like child trafficking as if people are getting grabbed off the streets, and that's like we talked about earlier, that's like less than 1% of it. The reality is it's family members selling people or like exchanging kids for whatever it might be, money or food or whatever it might be.
And a lot of this has to do with, I mean, this is true for human trafficking more generally. It's a labor thing. It's not necessarily just kind of a sex trafficking thing. These are trafficking occurs because of power dynamics and because of our power differentials, the existence of borders. People are kind of forced into servitude, and whether that takes the form of kind of sex slavery or other forms of what you might call slavery. So if you're serious about addressing those, then you would kind of look at how borders function, how folks who are desperate need to do these sorts of things. But the mythology, the myth that and this was true in Taken too, that the idea that some pretty white girl is just going to get snatched off the street, or from the mall or whatever, and forced into sex slavery. It just doesn't really happen, and it sounds like Sound of Freedom is predicated on that idea.
Yeah.
And that's very much what Taken was predicated on. This Liam Neeson's daughter was, I think, in Europe, in France, and she was following the band U2 around, which makes no sense because young people don't like U2.
How dare you?
I mean, I love 80s and 90s U2.
Yeah, more recent, not so much.
No, exactly.
When they came out on like Fridge, like, there was an incident where U2 music was embedded in like fridges that were released. It was like a digital interface, so you had U2 music on it or something.
I saw
that was a major milestone in the history of appliance interfacing electronics via Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
But anyway,
terrible. Yeah.
I mean, it's back to this taking singular events and trying to manifest it as something huge, and it's not addressing the problem. And I think that's one of the big critiques of that movie. So, no, that's
apparently it's doing really well, and I think there is an audience for that kind of thing.
I mean, there's something to be said about a feel-good ending about the good guy winning, right? And like, people want that. We talked about the simplified picture of the world, but it doesn't actually address the problem. So, that's pretty crazy. Bono is so into tech. All right. I don't know if those are I's or L's. I apologize. Isla Saba?
Oh,
historian.
I think I know this person.
You do. This is a name related
via Twitter.
Oh, that's awesome. Historians at the Movies is a great podcast where historians comment on popular films related to their field. There's usually a Sunday night live stream on Twitter. Oh, that's fun. Historians at Movies. I need to look this up on Twitter right now.
Jason Herbert, I think, founded it, and if that is who I think it is, Lauren, she has a new book coming out on conservatism on college campuses, if I'm correct.
Historians at the Movies. Here's a link for anyone that's interested in that. I love watching. So there's a series. I don't know who does it. But they basically have a expert in history or whatever it is, or military, looking at movies and breaking them down. This is where I learned like how bullshit Braveheart is, and how, Saving Private Ryan, some of it was accurate in terms of the D-Day invasion and things like that. So I love it. I'm gonna take a look at this.
Yeah, I think every Sunday they I've never done it, but because 8 p.m. on a Sunday, and this is very late for me. Yeah, which is fine. But
I appreciate it.
Okay. Oh, absolutely. All right, are we going somewhere?
All right.
Where are we going, dude?
So how would you pronounce that name?
I think it's Lazenby.
Lazenby.
I think
Lazenby. Thank you for joining us. First time chat. You should click the follow button. 1, because it helps our visibility, and 2, you'll get notification of future guests in case you happen to be interested in mechanical biology, which will happen in 2 weeks. If not, you'll just get notifications and we'll get our numbers up higher. So feel free to follow us. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for the first time chat.
I made it.
Go Haku. Nice. You found somewhere.
Go
Haku. I like drunk history on Comedy Central. Have you watched it? How do you feel?
I have, yeah.
Has there been a particular example in your domain of expertise? We talked about in a previous stream, who was the guest? But we talked about the Americans with Disabilities, and she said the recount of that was very, very accurate.
Oh, interesting.
So what have you seen on that was like, they did it right?
It's been a long, long time since I've seen any episodes of that, but I have to check out the ADA one if it's accurate. The ADA is really important and really interesting.
Jenny Root was the guest. She's a special education expert. She said the ADA depiction in that was actually really accurate. Okay. So
I'll have to check that out.
No, that's very fun. So you can't recount one recently that was, a lot of them are pre-1945.
Yeah.
So maybe outside of your domain of expertise.
Yeah. I remember there was one I saw that was just so funny. I don't recall what it was, though. It was it's about Edison. And
Edison Tesla.
Yeah. Have you seen that one?
I probably have. I don't remember it in particular, but
I think they were talking about how Edison was just an asshole.
Yeah.
Just a huge asshole.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, and he would, I think, electrocute animals. But who knows if this, I mean, this is not my field. I have heard that Edison was an asshole, but I don't know how historically accurate some of that was.
Yeah. And there's some good ones. Mildly related, how do you feel about the play Hamilton?
Hate it.
As a historian, you hate it.
Yeah,
As a music fan, it's okay.
It's the narrative it doesn't make any sense. The idea that Hamilton was an immigrant, and this effort it's a very much kind of an Obama era text. This effort to sort of not to suggest, but to kind of shoehorn everything into contemporary politics. So the truth is that Hamilton and other founding framers or whatever were immigrants rather than settlers. Is that's
that's interesting.
Yeah. So the idea that they are somehow comparable to people who are have no sort of authority or are downtrodden. In the contemporary context, that doesn't really sit well with me. So I found it problematic for that reason, and Lin-Manuel Miranda is just he's just so cheesy, Sorry.
No, I mean, this is the hard part and something we deal with in sciences. Like we have to sacrifice accuracy for simplicity, clarity, or digestibility.
Yeah.
And I mean, say what you will about how he did it. Like some people were genuinely excited to read about, aspects of Hamilton's life because of it.
Right.
And so it's like, does the bad outweigh the good, or is it the other? Like, I mean, do you wrestle with that? Because he increased the popularity of Google searches in that time domain, I'm sure.
Right.
Is the end justify the means in that case?
I would say, well, first of all, the very book that it was based on is not a great book. It is a kind of a pop history, but it's this kind of goes back to what we were talking about concerning kind of political splits within the discipline and methodological splits to some extent, right? So the sacrificing accuracy and maybe rigor to write a book that's going to be consumed by people who don't necessarily want to be all that critical, or who want to celebrate the founding rather than kind of criticize it.
Yeah.
And so the way that Miranda, I think, handled it was, he didn't handle it with care necessarily. I think he oversimplified certain things, and and maybe you have to do that, but I don't know. I just find it kind of an irksome, bothersome text.
I mean, so your general thought on it is that it framed the founding fathers in a much more positive light than they should have.
Exactly, right, and also just the whole kind of going back to the cheesiness dimension of this. It reminded me of something I did in high school, probably. Write raps about history. And
you got to make the words rhyme.
Yes.
Priority 1 is rhyming. Priority 2 is historical accuracy. Right.
Yeah. Am I supposed to get in this thing? I should, right?
Maybe press start. Does it tell you what the next key is?
Get back to the op center.
Maybe you have to go back. I honestly don't know this
center?
game that well. If anyone knows, feel free to throw your comments in there. Huggy Bear did have one benefit from watching Hamilton. I've started dueling folks with pistols to settle arguments after I saw it. Sounds legit. Oh man.
Didn't we just mark the anniversary of the duel? The Burr-Hamilton duel?
Oh, was it?
I think we did.
Man,
yeah.
so as a historian and as someone that's slightly younger than me, do you remember got milk.
Yes, I do remember that. Yeah.
Everyone knows who shot Alexander Hamilton because of a got milk commercial, which is absolutely brilliant. Like, kudos to them for their advertising campaign. That was absolutely amazing.
It really was, and it got people to drink milk.
That's true. Oh man, we should do another prediction because we have a bunch. Which one do you want to do?
Oh,
we should dive into this topic. We haven't touched that one at all. If you're okay with that.
Sure.
All right, if you guys aren't following, click the follow button, get your standard internet units. You can gamble them on this question. Gamble is a generous word because no money is involved. It's just standard internet units that are useless outside of this channel. But we like to do predictions based on the expertise of our guest who actually comes up with these questions. And so we're going to change topics a little bit from stranger danger. We're going to start diving into HIV and the HIV panic of the 1980s. Is that a fair way to describe it?
It was,
It was an interesting response. So the question is, today, this is a current day question. What number of Americans with undiagnosed HIV? Is it less than 100,000 or greater than 100,000? And so note the population of the United States is what, 300 and something million?
30
Yeah,
million?
300.
Yeah.
We'll say 330 million.
Yeah.
The question is, what number of Americans are currently living their day-to-day life with undiagnosed HIV, as in they have HIV, but they've not formally got a diagnosis for that. So what is that number? Less than 100,000 or greater than 100,000? And I'm going to run to the restroom quick, so I will be right back. But everyone, you have about 1 minute and 20 seconds to make this prediction. Throw your numbers in there now. If you're not following us, click the follow button. Also, don't cheat with Google or ChatGPT.
If anyone knows how to do this, let me know. How's the kitty doing in there? Good. Kitty's fine.
Yep. And I realized I just left you hanging without any talking points.
No.
Predictions.
I'm intently focused on this.
Huggy Beer's question, there is a kitten. Well, this one's easy to answer.
Yeah.
So we had 2 cats. One of the 2 never came back from being outside because presumably just that happens over time. And that was about 4 months ago. And so we've committed to getting new cats. So my wife brought our oldest cat, who's about 12 years old, into the vet and just asked, hey, we're looking at getting a new cat. Do you guys have anything? And they're like, yes, take these 2 kittens home. So about 2 days ago, we got 2 new cats. They're very young. They're like, I don't know, like a
really
month
young.
or something.
Yeah.
They're really they're
young.
tiny little things. But one just got spayed and is hiding in our bedroom right now. The other one is in a different room because we're separating them from the senior cat. So yes, there are new kittens in the Hansen household. So anyone that wanted personal factoids, there you go.
Do they have names?
Not yet.
Okay.
We're deciding. So my wife is debating names for the cats, and so they were both born without tails. One is completely missing a tail, and one has just a slight nub of a tail. So she was like playing around with different derivatives of 0 and 1, just like a
binary.
Yeah, exactly, like a nub versus non, or cipher versus mono, or whatever it is. But we don't have names. So how will they get incorporated in the stream? Give it about a month when they get incorporated in the household. And a Huggy Beer, I will hold up a cat for you on stream. Can you get your vet on the stream? That is a fun one. And
Do you
Paul,
like your vet?
But they're excellent,
Good,
actually.
good.
They've been really good. Mr. Nubs and Mr. Null are good names. run that by my wife. Thank you, Go Haku. That is amazing. But yeah, one of the things I ask my guests afterwards, and I'll send you this email as well, Paul, is that if you know anyone that might be interested in being on stream, let me know and just send me some names. And if it happens to be your vet, let's do it, because I love having experts on.
Who's your vet?
We go to, God, it's
Dr.
on Tennessee.
Quarterman?
It's on Tennessee going west. I don't remember the name of it off the top of my head.
Tennessee. Okay.
I don't know, but I'm really happy with it. Are you
Good.
in the market for a vet?
No. We like our vet.
Yeah, no, they've been great. So our previous two cats were named Gozer and Vigo. And I don't know if you recognize where those names come from.
I don't.
It's Ghostbusters 1 and 2, the bad guys. Gozer the Gozerian and Vigo the Carpathian.
Okay.
And then the vet recognized their names. And the second time we went to the vet, they had the sheet and they had Vigo the Carpathian with a cat head pasted on it.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, no, they went above and beyond.
That's fantastic.
All right. Sorry for the detour, ladies and gentlemen. Number of Americans with undiagnosed HIV. Paul, what is the answer?
It is about 160,000.
Greater than 100,000.
Yes. And, that speaks to, or is maybe a reflection of the fact that, or it illustrates the fact that the HIV/AIDS crisis is not over. A lot of historians make that argument because there is this notion that HIV/AIDS is kind of a past epidemic, when in fact it's most certainly still with us, right? And so that's something I explore a bit in my next project, and hope to perhaps excavate kind of some of the links between how we've handled or understood HIV/AIDS and COVID. I think there is this growing sense that COVID is somehow over, when in fact it's not. But it's interesting to see how similar scripts have been used to kind of understand both of these different epidemics. Obviously, they're different, but there are similar sorts of approaches that have been taken kind of when it comes to narrativizing and understanding these different crises.
I mean, that's intriguing. So if you do that math, let me see what that number comes out to. So that is 0.05% of the population in the United States has HIV.
Yeah.
It's not, but socially it's been decided that that's an acceptable percentage. I mean, similar with COVID, like there's a certain threshold of what is an infection rate that we're okay with and we don't care about anymore. But that's a non-trivial amount.
Right.
And I mean, I guess the other thing is, and South Park did a great episode on this, is that if you have enough money, this isn't even an issue anymore.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. Well, and for a lot of folks in the 90s with the rise of antiretroviral drugs.
Go Haku, brilliant minds. I can't help but think of the South Park episode about HIV.
Yeah, Magic Johnson, right?
Inject money directly and it cures HIV, which is not wrong. Same thing's true with COVID, right? Joe Rogan is fine as long as he has sufficient medical treatment.
Right.
But a lot of the population, that's still an issue, presumably.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah. Well, especially given our healthcare system, right?
I mean, so we're diving into current day HIV, and in your book, I mean, you look at the history of this, especially in the 1980s, and there was a very particular case where a kid got it through a blood transfusion. I mean, I guess, can you relay some of that, like, origin of HIV response?
Yeah, Ryan White was a teenager who acquired, he had hemophilia, severe hemophilia, and he would receive treatments of what's called factor VIII, that is designed to help blood clots, or to help blood clot, because hemophilia involves hemophilia is, or what happens with hemophilia is blood. You bleed a lot, right? Profusely, and this can be obviously very, very problematic or harmful. And so, sorry, I'm trying to figure out where I'm going.
No worries.
Factor VIII facilitated blood clotting, and it entailed, or it included the pooled blood, essentially, of a lot of different people, a lot of different donors. And so within the 80s context, you had obviously growing fears about factor VIII and other self-administered treatments potentially leading to the infection of people like Ryan White, and that's exactly what happened. And going back to what Ken was saying, I mean, initially, because factor VIII and other self-administered treatments for people with hemophilia had been so liberating, people were accepting the fact that a lot of folks with hemophilia actually acquired hepatitis C before the outbreak of HIV/AIDS.
Wow.
And so a lot of folks just thought, yeah, okay, well, we're just gonna have to deal with this because this is enabling me to ride my bike.
Yeah, it's worth it.
Yeah, exactly, it's worth it. But obviously with HIV/AIDS, this is a far deadlier and mysterious illness, and Ryan White became a household name. Sorry, the kitty is meowing. She's okay, right?
Yeah, I'm sure she's fine.
Yeah,
it's not a scream yet.
Yeah, that's the threshold, I guess.
Yeah.
So Ryan White became a household name because he was barred from attending his classes in person in Indiana, in Rushville, Indiana, where he was from. He lived in Kokomo, which is nearby. And this became
there's an indicator now.
Oh,
is that a blue arrow?
I don't know. See, I've been trying to follow it. It's just I don't know.
I think go back to the main road.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt. No, it's a very heavy topic, but we got to balance gameplay versus.
Exactly.
I would try the main road.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm guessing as well as you.
We'll see. This is where I was earlier, and then but so this news story broke in July of 1985, and it broke shortly after Rock Hudson's HIV or AIDS diagnosis became public. In this way, okay.
Oh, there we go.
Oh no,
we got people to kill.
Okay, excellent. Excellent. Right. Whoa. And so, this he became a household name. This became a national and international news story, and because he was barred from attending classes in person in Indiana, he sued. His family sued, and a very lengthy courtroom battle ensued. But finally, he secured the right to return to classes in the Kokomo area, in Rushville specifically. And by that point, he was a household name, and according to some folks, and I would agree with this, the most famous person with HIV/AIDS in the United States, if not the world. And he maintained that position or that status through his death in 1990 from AIDS-related causes. I mean, when he died, Elton John was by his side. I mean, he very well known, very well liked, and
it was like 5 years after the diagnosis.
He lived for a long time. Okay. Yeah. And he was 18. He had just turned 18 several months before. This was in April of 1990. And
Go Haku. Donald Trump and Michael Jackson attended Ryan White's funeral.
Well, so Michael Jackson attended the funeral. Donald Trump provided the jet that enabled Michael Jackson to go visit Jeannie White, his mother, and console her.
I see.
But there is this not very famous, but famous picture of Donald Trump and Michael Jackson together on that jet.
Wow.
So you can look that up.
Fun factoid.
It's strange times.
Mm-hmm.
And
sorry to interrupt.
No. Absolutely. When he died, Congress was deliberating or considering adopting an AIDS emergency relief bill, and the subcommittee that was deliberating over this decided to name it in his honor, and so that led to the Ryan White Comprehensive AIDS Resources Emergency Act. and that was finally passed and signed into law by George Bush Sr. In 1990, and it remains this really vital program for AIDS relief and prevention and treatment.
So I framed this as a panic earlier, but it sounds like the response was much more balanced than it was for Stranger Danger.
Well, it depends. I mean, so for a lot of folks were, well, in the Ryan White case, the folks who opposed his inclusion in school, they really wouldn't accept the idea that their children were not at risk, right? So
yeah, it was just fear.
Right. And, from a certain vantage, it's understandable because this is a fatal disease. It's not super well understood. It's relatively novel. I mean, obviously, HIV/AIDS had been around for quite some time before that, but it really kind of breaks into people begin to really understand what it is in the 80s, the early 80s. But it's still relatively poorly understood by the general public. Researchers had determined by that point that you really couldn't contract it through casual contact. That is HIV. They called it something else at that point, but I'm just calling it HIV for the sake of simplicity. But that didn't really assuage the anxieties of these parents, and so many of them opposed his attendance or his entry into school. So that's what kind of triggered that whole crisis and made this a national issue. So there was a panic in that respect. I would call that a panic, but a lot of people were dying, a lot of people were getting sick. So it
wasn't unfounded.
Right. There's a little more there than the Stranger Danger.
I mean, so in retrospect, there were a few major milestones, like Freddie Mercury dying from HIV/AIDS. Eazy-E was an unexpected one. Princess Diana hugging HIV patients. I mean, and you cover this broad range of things in your new book, or what is your focus?
So my focus is on, it's more or less a biography of Ryan White.
Okay, so it's that particular.
Yeah, very much focused on that. So the first chapter is all about, I can go through the whole book if you want me to.
No, it's not published yet. Spoilers.
No, it's fine.
You need to sell 5 additional copies.
So yeah.
Wait. Sorry. Related to that, does Tenure care about how many copies you've sold? No. It's just as long as the book is out there, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, with where you are on university press.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. No.
All right, that's fair.
Okay, where do I go? Oh yeah. So first chapter is about that whole saga over blood, basically, and hemophilia, which I talked about a second ago. Second one's about this decision to bar him from classes in Indiana, and the backlash that followed. Then the third chapter is all about kind of his growing celebrity, and which resulted from this crisis in Indiana, and the fact that he was viewed as this kind of innocent victim or person with AIDS, as opposed to the overwhelming majority of people with HIV/AIDS who were men having sex with other men, or people who used intravenous drugs. And so Brian White in many ways became this kind of sympathetic person with AIDS, and there's the whole book kind of talks a lot about this notion of innocence and the politics of innocence and respectability politics and all that sort of stuff. So the fact that he became a celebrity and so many people who had AIDS, who died of AIDS, did not, or were not well known, or for that matter, were not really considered human, or Oh, here we go. Okay.
So why? I mean, there were obviously. I mean, there were probably dozens of cases of this at the time. Why did his reach that status? Well, it was just timing and luck, or
I think
the parents, or what was the?
Yeah. So I don't know if it had a lot of times in the. Oh, these are enemies. Oh no. A lot of times in the stranger danger kind of moment. the appeal of the case had a lot to do with the kind of media savvy of parents.
I see.
So the case that I mentioned earlier, the Eitan Pates case, obviously had to its popularity had a lot to do with Stanley Pates and the fact that he was a photographer, right? And in the Adam Walsh case, you have John Walsh, who was ready for prime time, super eloquent. Yeah, I mean, he wasn't a celebrity then, but he became a celebrity, and much of that can be attributed to his, comfort in front of the camera. But that wasn't really the case with Ryan White. His mother was not the most kind of eloquent. Well, she's still alive, and I think she would agree with this. Because she was kind of camera shy, and she didn't think that she was the best spokesperson for the cause. Then and now she's kind of no longer in the limelight, but she became a pretty well known and pretty well liked HIV/AIDS activist. She'd been involved with organizations like ACT UP and others. So she definitely kind of made a name for herself in that realm, but at least initially that wasn't why this case caught on. I think it had a lot to do with Rock Hudson and
I see.
And the fact that Ryan White was, a photogenic, kind of clean-cut boy next door.
White male.
Yeah, white guy,
yeah.
Straight, middle class, and that goes back to a lot of what we were talking about concerning, who gets to be a victim or who gets to be innocent, I suppose. And so that's one major reason. And also so some of these children who had acquired HIV that later became AIDS through blood products, those with hemophilia, there were quite a few cases of this across the country, but and this had led to various school districts making different decisions about how they were going to deal with the issue. But what made his case kind of different was the fact that his name was known, right? So he wasn't anonymous.
Yeah. Had a face behind.
Right, exactly. And so that had a lot to do with it. People could talk about, the Ryan White case and not just the case in the Bronx, which was also that was a controversy as well. And the same thing happened in Florida, a similar thing. The Ray brothers, I don't know if you're familiar with that.
No, I haven't heard that one.
So
I apologize for interrupting discussion and gameplay.
Yes.
It's time for NARC.
Oh, okay. Let's do it.
If you want to pause this guy,
let's do it. Yeah.
We're at 10:35. It's going to take you 25 to 30 minutes to beat this game, so we're going to switch over. Again,
are you just estimating based on my?
Oh no, just based on an average gameplay of people that have played NARC.
It's on the old school.
Yep. Nintendo. So that's the NES. Okay. Let me get the clock up. Do you want to see the clock, or do you not want to see the clock?
I don't want to see the clock.
Okay, so I'll keep the clock over here. Are you sure we can put it right there?
That's fine. Yeah.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. Speaking of moral panic, we are on to NARC, a game for the NES. We have every guest play it. Yeah.
And there was a TV movie for Ryan. I see the. Oh yeah. Okay. Just say no.
Yeah, let's do it. So anyone not familiar with Ask a Scientist Gaming, we close every stream with a playthrough of NARC, and we're going to time every single guest. So Paul, you are off to the races. Walk right. Oh, what the hell happened? Press start. Oh, I just lost you 5 seconds, so I'll take that back at the end. Is it not working if I click off the screen? Okay, there we go. I apologize. That paused for a brief moment. But yeah, anyone not familiar with the stream, we close every stream with NARC, which is a bargain bin game for the NES that I played as a joke, and then we made every single guest since then play, but we time guests, so you can see the clock in the top right corner of the screen. Paul is kind enough to agree to this. But interestingly enough, this does tie back to this idea of moral panic, right? Because what was it, the early 90s, there was this, Mortal Kombat plus NARC was one of the games. It was the arcade game where you have body parts flying everywhere. And then the ESRB rating was a byproduct of everyone saying, video games are causing violence. I thought this was mostly put to rest at this point, but recently the French president said the riots in France were due to video games. So, what is your perspective on this as a historian? You haven't looked into this specific topic, but you've tangentially seen this discussion, presumably.
Yeah,
find a door.
I think
speed run.
Yeah, new texts, new media are always going to provoke these sorts of fears. We've talked about comic books several times throughout the stream, and that's a clear example of this. Folks were concerned that comic books were going to corrupt their children. Same thing with television, same thing with video games, music. We've seen not just, we talked about the Parents Music Resource Center, but also keep going.
No, there's nothing to gain by killing people.
Damn.
By the way, this game was written and programmed by Nancy Reagan. Just kidding. Don't quote me that in any book you write.
But you said it.
Exactly. I sound legit. Speaking of quotes, did you reach out to Ryan White's mom?
So I have tried. She is not really online all that much. At this stage, I'm almost done with the book. I have a lot of quotes from her. She's on the record saying a lot of different things. And
so you just through other means.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so now you'll have to shoot the guys in black with bullets. So you'll have to hold the shoot button. I'm sorry to interrupt the dialogue. I apologize.
So I have to kill the guys in black.
Yep. Okay. So kill the guys in brown too, just because it'll make more guys in black appear. But you have to do it in this range, because Nintendo's stupid and this is how it programs stuff.
Okay.
But if you do bullets, hold the shoot button at close range, one of them will drop a blue card, and then you'll be able to get through that door. This is something the speedrun community calls RNG, which is random number generated, so you can't really control when it happens. It makes this game terrible.
I love it.
I do love it. It started as a joke, but now I'm one of the world's foremost experts at NARC, so I add that to my
your CV.
Resume.
Yeah.
I'll go up for full professor next year, and it'll be up to my CV, so...
You're going up for full?
Yep, next cycle I'll go full.
Nice.
Oh, there it is.
All right.
Blue card. Perfect.
All right.
Well done, sir. Sorry, I interrupted. So you tried to reach out to her, but there was...
Yeah, I think when...
How old is she? She's got to be in her 80s.
I think she's in her 70s. Yeah,
okay.
She was in her 30s when the whole story broke, so I think she's in her mid-70s. I think whenever the manuscript is kind of done or approved, I'll probably send it to her. I have her mailing address.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah,
so she'll get a copy.
Yeah.
That's awesome of you.
I'm dedicating it to her son and her and her daughter.
So this isn't a judgment, just a curiosity.
Yeah.
Have there been other books written on this?
So but not a lot, actually.
Jump in that car.
How do I jump in?
And stay on the bottom of the screen, and you'll run into stuff, but that's not your fault. You have to memorize the game.
Damn it. Could have used that. Could have been so useful.
I feel bad. We closed the night with this just coaching through a video game and discussing really interesting topics. So, but anyway,
run away from this guy, right?
Yeah, exactly.
All
Keep
right.
going right. So there's other books on the subject matter, or is there
not a whole lot?
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is going to be the most comprehensive to date that looks at Ryan White specifically.
I think so. Yeah, there's another book that came out a couple years ago.
Jump over that guy.
Not going to fall into the ocean. No. There was one written a couple of years ago about deindustrialization and the Ryan White case. So the author kind of links the two. So deindustrialization in Kokomo, Indiana, and the ways in which it intersected with the Ryan White saga.
That is a curious tie that I would not have expected.
Yeah, deindustrialization was happening at the time, and so there were concerns about kind of masculinity, and and so that obviously ties into the Ryan White case as well. It's an interesting book, yeah.
So we've had this theme several times where it's like the cultural ambiance influences the response to certain events.
Yeah.
Like, do you look at I mean, in Denmark, their kidnapping rate in Stranger Danger was probably similar, but the panic was less. I mean, is that comparison, does that exist? Is that your control sample?
You know, we don't do we don't do those sorts of things. I mean, it would just be almost impossible to kind of.
I mean, given the number of variables, right?
Yeah.
Like direct comparison. That's fair.
Yeah.
So you're gonna want to stay on the bottom. Maybe go up a little because there'll be a bomb somewhere here, but you have no choice. You don't have it memorized. Have you ever speedrun this game?
I've never seen this game.
There's zero expectations. I apologize.
No.
Walk right, and eventually you'll find another car.
Hopefully, I'm doing okay.
I mean, this is one of the things, and I discuss this with like social scientists that study psychology and things like that. Like chemistry, I have a relatively well-controlled environment.
Yeah.
Like I can control the variables.
Right.
Whereas you have so many convoluting factors that you can't isolate things. And yet, I mean, there are overarching theories on cause and effect, and it's such a hard thing to do.
Yeah. And I mean, you're never gonna.
So stay on the bottom for the rest. No worries, you'll walk the rest of the way. Just go down.
Oh, down. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, essentially, we're just making arguments, and we have to obviously substantiate those arguments, but it's kind of up to the reader and up to other historians whether they buy it or not.
Yeah.
So. That's the best we can do, really. There's never going to be something that's unfalsifiable, I guess.
I mean, so you have conferences that are like post-1945 U.S. politics. Like, what does your meetings look like?
It depends on how big the meeting is. So we have the Organization of American Historians is kind of the organization for anyone who focuses on the U.S. Or kind of America broadly, not North America, but pre-U.S. America, I guess. And
jump over.
Oh, jump over. Oh, you told me I was going to be on the bottom the whole time.
I apologize. The last stretch.
I thought you knew this game.
I used to.
There we go.
Back when I was young.
But there are more kind of niche conferences. So one I'll be attending in. Oh, look.
Yeah, Clown with
Clown Panic.
Don't you remember the 80s and 90s?
Oh, yeah.
That's what it looked like. Everyone was giving you drugs and throwing syringes at you, and clowns had knives.
Well, in Nancy Reagan's mind, yes, that's true.
Paul, I'm going to be really excited if you just completely right angle your research and you're like, I'm going to study video games and drugs and their convolution in history.
Do I have to get a card?
Yep. So you're going to go far right through that door.
Just like this game, far right.
Exactly.
Okay.
There's no propaganda here. We're fine.
And just keep going?
Yep. You'll find what is this one? Silver card. So you're going to press up through the door, but don't press up too hard because you'll go back through.
I'm not listening to you at all.
Needless to say, you are not the first person.
Okay. All right.
In fact, that is a very common event. But when you go through the door, don't go too high. Go left.
Oh, left.
And then you'll see that.
Oh, okay.
Right there.
Oh, right.
I have to balance discussing with you because it's a lot of fun in learning this stuff versus coaching you through the remainder of this game.
I get that. I appreciate the guidance. No.
Fun factoid about this. So when this was released for the arcade, it had full references to drugs and all those things. When it was released for Nintendo has a very squeaky clean image.
Yeah.
And so you'll notice the marijuana plants are not actually marijuana, right?
They look like agaves.
7 leaves of some kind, and they remove all mentions of drugs in this version of the game.
Wow.
So you're going to go left on this one.
Okay.
So those aren't marijuana plants. They're just plants in the Nintendo version of this game.
Do they blow you up?
Some of them do. Some of them give you money. Just like
real marijuana.
Yeah, just like real marijuana.
It's best to just avoid them.
Yep. So what you're going to do is shoot the Rambo-looking guys with bullets at close range, and one of them is going to drop a green card. So the blue. So shoot that guy.
That guy's Rambo?
No, you'll see Rambo come in.
Oh, okay.
So shoot the white
cowboys.
I don't remember what their name is.
But they have a name.
They do have a name. There is lore.
Oh, that's
so bullets on those.
He kind of reminds me of Mr. T, sort of.
Yeah. So bullets on those. So hold the shoot button.
Oh.
But it has to be at close range because this game is dumb. So Paul, fun factoid for you.
Yes.
For about a year, I was the world record holder in the speed run of this game. So I figured out a glitch on the final boss that saved 20 seconds. Nope, it'll drop a green card. And so I obsessed for about 6 months to figure out how to beat this game faster, and we did figure it out between me and my brother, who's a computer engineer who actually reversed engineered aspects of the game.
Did I get it?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
So green card through the door.
Nice.
So yeah, I know more about this game than any human should know.
You should write an article about it.
So there's a YouTube tutorial that's about 30 minutes long that tells you how to beat this game in under 10 minutes.
And
so
did you?
No, it's my video.
Oh, it's your
the most
video.
Edited video I've ever done on anything. Science expertise aside, that's what I delivered to the greater community.
And didn't you say you had a science video that had 10,000 views?
Yeah, that's crazy. So transient absorption spectroscopy, monitoring color change after you shine light on a sample. And I just walk through, here's the technique, here's the basis of it, here's the history of it.
Hotel listener.
Exactly. Sounds legit.
Yeah. Listener.
Oh, nice.
Oh,
You
I shot the
blew up
car.
Yeah.
Mr. Big International.
Isn't this a great way to close the night?
It's
just
wonderful.
mindless.
I love that.
Just, oh, man.
I kind of want to write an article about this.
If you ever want to collaborate on an article on
right.
NARC, I'm happy to contribute.
I have a lot
The
to say
sad part
about
is
it.
I lost the world record a year ago, and it's
Damn
the
it.
former world record holder, and it is a person who I literally coached through this game. I said, here's what I learned, here's how you beat me, and he did. So we're all about sharing knowledge at Ask a Scientist.
There you
Game,
go.
ladies and gentlemen. All right, you're getting pretty close to the end. Is there anything you want to talk about that we haven't covered tonight? I mean, is there any subjects?
Let's see.
So you have this card.
Oh, I have this card.
Yeah. You have the red and the blue card, and you'll get to a next one where you fight a boss.
Oh.
Yeah, you got the boss.
I got the boss.
You're at a good pace right now, though.
What's the record for guests?
For guests that are not me, it's 17 minutes.
Okay.
The boss is surprisingly difficult because it has weird hitboxes and timing and things like that, but I'll try to walk you through that the best I can.
All right. Do I go
All
through
right.
this door?
If anyone has any last-minute questions, our guest tonight is Dr. Paul Renfro, who's an expert on post-1945 U.S. politics, U.S. Sexuality, as well as stranger danger, HIV, AIDS, anything else I'm missing, I apologize. You have a very diverse set of expertise, which I really
They all kind of
appreciate.
intersect in a way, but
They do,
yeah.
and it's been fun to revisit that because there's underlying themes. Like we talked about the theory foundation of it, and very similar causal things are behind all these.
Isn't that
which
interesting?
Yeah, it's intriguing. I mean, is that what led you down these paths? Is that some underlying mechanism just came to light and you followed it, or
In terms of theory?
yeah, in terms of how you stumbled upon the specific domains that you would pursue?
Yeah, I don't know. It just kind of, sometimes it just happens, I guess, and you know what interests you and what doesn't. And do I go through? No.
Keep going.
So
you're gonna shoot the guy in the wheelchair with a rocket.
Aww.
Which is a sentence I utter every single stream.
Yeah. We were just talking about the Americans with Disabilities Act.
Oh, we come full circle every single stream.
Yeah, I didn't really answer your question, but wait, is he the boss?
Yes, he's one of the boss. So he's phase one of the boss. So you got to hit him 3 times with rockets, and then you're doing the right strategy. Just keep shooting until you kill everything. There you go. 1 time, inchworms across. Wheelchair guy will come back, kill all these guys. Got the rocket shot down, which is good.
Yeah.
So we deconstructed this game, and you have 7 frames to shoot a rocket, which means you have 7/60th of a second, basically, where you get a rocket shot versus not. Shot number 2, well done.
Did I get him?
All right, if anyone has questions, Paul is happy to answer them on anything post-1945. U.S. politics, U.S. history, moral panic. This could range from, we talked about stranger danger, satanic panic. We talked about HIV, AIDS. We've been down a lot of different pathways. If you guys have questions, throw them in chat. Also, we're about 10 minutes from raiding somebody else. If anyone has suggestions on who we should raid, feel free to throw them in chat. Wednesday night is an unusual time to stream, so if anyone has suggestions, we are happy to take them.
For rating, you said?
Yeah, it's basically you take yourself and your viewers to somebody else.
Okay.
That's still streaming, like you're saying, I'm done for the night. Let's have our people go somewhere else. It's a community extra. Oh, there you go.
Did I get him?
So he'll drop a gold card. There you go. Then through the door.
All right.
Now we're on to phase 2 of Mr. Big. And so what you're going to have to do is jump.
Mr. Big?
Yeah, that was Mr. Big, and you're going to get phase 2 of Mr. Big. You're going to go to the top of the screen, jump in the air, and on your way down, you're going to have to shoot him in the hat with a rocket. Is step 1 of this battle.
All right. I go right?
All the way up to the top of the screen. So he can't hit you if you're at the top of the screen. So walk away from him a little bit.
Okay.
And then you're going to jump and rocket him in the hat.
Where am I?
You're right behind him. So you can go right or left. You have room to go either way. Go to the top of the screen. Yeah, you're that. Go right. Get away from him. You're going to want to get some distance. Then you're going to turn around and jump and rocket him in the hat. So you'll tap B and then tap A. So that was a tap A. There we go. That was very close. Yep. So it's a very particular timing on when that rocket has to hit him. It has to hit him in the hat. Now, imagine you're like a 10-year-old kid. You get one rental from Blockbuster every month, and you get this stupid video game. Oh, there you go. Rocket in the face. Okay, so now you don't have to jump anymore. You just have to rocket in the face. Maybe get a little distance away and back. Rockets in the face. There you go. So yeah, you can walk left. You're going to want to get some distance. You're doing it right. You can go to the top and then go left. He can't shoot you when you're at the top. All right, shoot him. Shoot him again. Rocket. There you go. Okay, so now it's just bullets. So you have to be in the middle of the screen and shoot him with bullets.
So he's just a skeleton now.
Yep. So turn back, hold the shoot button. There you go. You got one of them. So you're going to want to be somewhere in here because you can't shoot him from the top for some stupid reason because this is how Nintendo works. And you're going to go back the other. Paul, if you have 30 minutes to waste, you should watch the tutorial on this because we break down.
It wouldn't be a waste.
Like my brother broke down, like this has 10 different animations and you can only hit the vertebrae at certain animations. And it's based on your XY position as well as the timing.
How do you figure all this out?
He reverse engineered the game.
Okay.
Like he actually looked in the code and, oh, that was perfect. Yeah, no, you're doing it right. And sometimes it hits and sometimes it doesn't.
So I'm a cop?
You are a cop. You're winning the war on drugs.
The sleeveless.
Oh, you're so close. Yeah. His name is Max Power.
Oh, really?
Remember Simpsons?
Yeah.
It's
Max Power. Didn't he change his name to Max Power?
Oh, there you go.
All right.
Okay, so now you're going to the right. That's it. You beat the boss. Now it's you have one final stage after you get the gold card in.
Mr. Big International.
No, you're on excellent pace right now. You got a sub 20 minute in you. So hit the gold card. All right. Now you're on to civil forfeiture the level, where you just steal gold without due process. And then you go to the right and find a keycard door and go through said keycard door.
Now I feel like a real cop.
Yeah, I know exactly. 1926.
Is that good?
That is it. No, that's very solid.
All right, I'll take it.
Know, I can look up.
Well, you got to deduct 5 seconds from that.
I do. I stole 5 seconds from you, so we're at 1921. All right, we'll get some immediate gratification in terms of your time, and you can put your initials in.
Oh,
This will not be recorded, but it brings
now
you
I feel
back
like I'm in. Yeah.
back in the arcade game.
Oh, yeah.
days. All right, let's find out where you sit on the all-time leaderboard.
Highest NARCs.
I love the line. Contact your DEA agent.
Is that what it says?
All right, so 43 plus.
Wait, and how fast do you do it?
World record is 9 minutes and 4 seconds.
Okay.
My time is 9 minutes and 7 seconds. All right, so we're on the order of 50 people And so 1921 puts you at, ignoring me, 3, puts you tied for 6th.
Okay. I'll take
I mean,
it.
that's that amongst that list, that's pretty solid. I mean, that's
almost
50 plus people.
Yeah, almost top 10%.
Yeah,
of it.
yeah. No, that puts you in a really high range. So congratulations.
I'm proud.
No, I was going to say,
Yeah.
you beat a level in Bond, you beat a level in Halo, you beat NARC in a reasonable time compared to your colleagues across all different disciplines. This is my favorite part. I put the different domains. So I'll send you a link to this entire list at some point. So
Hopefully I was reasonably articulate while doing all of it.
I mean, you'll reflect on the YouTube video. I don't know. Do you like watching yourself after you've done one of these?
Depends on what I do, I guess.
I'm conflicted. I used to hate my voice.
Yeah.
Now I hate my words.
Oh, really?
like in retrospect, I could have said this better and things like that, but so it goes. All right. If anyone has suggestions on people we should raid, you should throw those in chat right now, because we're going to raid somebody, preferably somebody science or education related, but we don't have strong preferences on that front. But yeah, if you guys have any suggestions, we're happy to take them. Paul, any parting words for the audience or any reflections on your experience thus far?
I love NARC.
It's the best game ever, right?
Best game ever. I won the war on drugs, and thank you for having me. It's been a lot of fun.
No, I mean, you can't complain about a night of video games and hanging out. And it's been a pleasure. I mean, from a chemist perspective, it's been great to talk to a historian, which is somebody that I don't regularly have contact with. And so I really appreciate your willingness to accept the invite and joining me for the evening. It's been a lot of fun talking about things and, finding our common boundaries, but also learning really new things that I'd never thought of before. So I really do appreciate that.
Yeah, of course. It's been wonderful.
Go Haku, I'm sorry you got an ad. You missed when Paul beat the NARC and won the war on drugs. So yeah, we're calling it a victory for this night. So we're all satisfied with our journey this evening. All right. So anyone, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for joining us. It's always great to have you guys on stream. In 2 weeks, we'll have Jerome Iranato, who's a biologist / biomedical scientist. He studies mechanobiology, which is interesting. There are physical forces that affect the behavior of cells and things like that. You can stress membranes and it results in impacts in their behavior and their biophysics and all sorts of cancer-related things. And so Jerome is an expert in all those things. And so come back in a couple of weeks if you want to learn and discuss about those things. Who knows where that journey takes us? But again, Paul, thank you. It has been a pleasure. It's been great. We've learned a lot. We've experienced a lot. I hope you enjoyed your time on stream.
I did.
Stick around if anyone. We're going to find somebody to raid. I'm not sure who that is, but thank you as usual. Your questions, your discussions are amazing. So thank you all. We'll see you in a couple weeks.
Thanks, everybody.